Good morning. Welcome into Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. We're live on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla here on the Pillar Exterior stage. What's up, DB?
What up? Hey, Liquid, I don't have. Man, is that you?
No, I think we're a little hot today, Shano.
Stop pressing my buttons.
Well, that's kind of my job here.
Fudge.
Oh,
I
a
wasn't-
little
I wasn't-
too.
No,
little,
that's good. That's
okay,
good.
You good? We can turn
I
it up?
wasn't as dramatic with that fudge.
Thank you, Shane.
Shane, do you need me to log in, or because the boss wants us on this? I don't know, huge camera. Do I have to log in? Like, what's the advantage? Is it just reading comments?
I don't know.
Yeah, the only thing it does for you is reading comments.
Do I want to read? I can read comments.
Yeah,
comments.
we
are
like
fine.
our comments.
People probably just say good morning and stuff like that.
Yeah, at this point, we're at the good morning text. So we got Steven and Heath chiming in early.
Two optimists. I kind of like, people develop personality traits. I just hope those guys, and maybe they don't want him around, but they need to invite Kobe back.
I liked Kobe. Kobe was doing...
they got on Kobe one day last week, and
Yeah.
Kobe, I don't know if I've seen him back.
Yeah. I don't think it was those two. There were some
No.
There's some people in the chat that were giving Kobe a hard time.
No. Heath could polish a turd.
Dude, he's my guy. I coached him in high school.
No, I'm serious. He could seriously polish a turd.
He's a good dude.
He'd tell you how it's a useful turd. I like that. I like that. What I mean? Sometimes it just is what it is, but that doesn't mean you have to rest in it.
Yeah, sometimes you need some infectious optimism.
Yeah, it was funny. I saw, so right as we were getting on the bus Saturday,
Mhm.
I had just said hi. I don't know. I think I'd given somebody a hug. I don't know. I was in the hugging mood, but I was mad.
Just always
though.
hugging people.
I was still I was a little upset.
What were you mad about when you get on the bus?
So a couple things.
Okay.
The response to the press conference bugged me.
Okay.
The immediacy of it.
Yeah.
And then I started thinking about, because we're packing up. It's a long time, and I wanted to stick around and actually help,
Mhm.
even though I don't know how to do anything. But I can like carry heavy stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's whatever. And I'm coming down, and it's a long way down. I mean, you are way the heck up there.
Yeah.
No, it was like
At the shoe?
yeah, like I had to get competitive because my side of the window was open.
Yeah.
And BMAC and Greg, it's closed on that side. So Greg kept telling me on Friday, hey, we're way up there. I'm like, no big deal. But when I got up there, it was a little queasy.
Mm.
So I'm like, fudge, I'm not about to be some baby. Like, I'm going to gut this thing out. So I walked out about, 7:30. Called DJ because I hadn't talked to him as early where he was.
Mhm.
We're just shooting a breeze. I'm like, shoot, I'm going to go back on air, but let me get my mind right. I'm like, these heights aren't going to whip me. That's so dumb. I can gamify anything. I mean anything, right? Anything.
Yeah.
How long I can watch the dogs in the back. I can compete with anything. So I'm going down, and it's a long way, and I'm mad about all the calls because I have too much time to think.
Yeah.
You're mad.
I was, and it's not funny.
It's dangerous when you got too much time to think.
So I come out, and like fans are cool. They're right by the bus, like literally. And I see my guy, Christian Jones.
All right.
So I'm walking and I didn't see him at first. He called. He's like, Coach B. I was like, hey. It's like, CJ. So now he's a hugger, at least with me. Like, he gives me my one a day. So he gives me a hug, and he's like, hey, I know you're mad, but we're going to get this right. And I was like, man, I love you. I got back on the bus. But I was mad again. Jess talked me off the ledge on the bus, too. But I just the gamut of emotions. But I like the fact that, like, the young guys, like, they're chomping at the bit. And those are the guys that he wants. It's like, hey, we're going to get this right.
I mean, we saw Willis McGahee get some run.
McGahee is a very, very intense person.
I could see that.
It's very intense.
We also saw he brought up yesterday that Caleb traveled for the first time, I believe, right?
Yeah, they're close.
How was that just for him? Like just as a kind of because that's a sort of a big step as a true freshman.
It is. It's a big step, and it's a big game.
Yeah.
I
mean, first time he travels to number 4 Ohio State, like that's pretty cool.
Yeah, he likes that, and he likes that stuff.
Yeah,
he's one of those guys that likes the moment.
He's competitive,
very
like hyper.
So, and he said something interesting. I think I can say this. I asked him, about Prude and some of the young guys on the back end, and he said it's just a different vibe the last couple of weeks because the way that they're going to practice, he said it's freeing and it's fun. Nobody's worried about making mistakes. He goes, I'm back there with the red group, and it's 3 young guys, and nobody cares, right? It's just the red group's that next group up, so it's him, Prude, Donnie Jones. And it's like, hey, we stay together. They didn't like piecemeal us in one at a time. The young guys playing like McGahee. He's a big Butler guy. So anytime he's around and gets to watch that.
Jamari, not Jimmy.
Yeah, Jamari.
Gus screamed out Jimmy Butler on the broadcast.
I can't hear. Like, I'm glad. So it's okay. So this was one of those games. You kind of get a vibe for what's going on with the fan base, right?
Yeah.
Because I keep my social media open.
Yeah.
I'm on TweetDeck. It's fast. Everybody was. I got the sense more people were listening to and I always want you to listen to the radio broadcast. I mean, believe me, like if you listen to the broadcast, you're going to get some chicken nuggets.
Yeah.
Right? Because like I said, it's, Jess is so connected down there, and Greg does a really good job of like, hey, you need anything? You got anything? What are we sensing down there? Like, not a lot of play-by-play guys.
Or like checking in.
Or like go like make sure that they have all the facets covered.
Yeah.
But you can get the X's and O's, you can get the jokes, you can get the regimen from Benny Mac, and you can get the insight from Jess. But anyway, I say all that to say, like, they like the fact that like the young guy, they're just vibing. And it's highly, highly competitive. And he's got some horses in the stable.
Yeah.
I said something a couple months, I don't know, it was probably about 5-6 weeks ago. And I think people maybe looked at me sideways, but now they haven't. Now that they're, and I'm not saying better, but they do have a chance to get more athletic in a hurry. Now, you're going to lose a lot of experience in a lot of places, but the young, hungry stuff is, and a lot of guys that have won a ton.
Yeah.
So, like, it's exciting. That's why I'm so culture driven. Set it. Just set it. Do what you got to do. Like I said, Saturday in Columbus was your Normandy. You picked that time to make the stands, and he's not going to go back to it again. He kind of almost alluded to it yesterday. He's like, hey, I said that. It's over. I'm going to get back to how we beat a good football team. Like, it was just weird. Like, when you watch how he talked, he made a conscious – I think he thought about it. He goes, is now the time or is now not the time to make this stand? Right? Yeah. And he shot his shot. I think his team is going to respond. It's like I said yesterday, you didn't hire him to win immediately Saturday.
Yeah.
You hired him to see
you didn't hire him for the quick fix.
You hired him to see what you get this Saturday. Well, and beyond, right? Because this is a prime example of why you drag me in. I let my friends in the fan base drag me in every year to schedule talk. I mean, I don't like to talk schedules. No, you got to talk schedules. Don't be such a fuddy-duddy. I don't like to talk schedules. You never know. Oh, man, 7-0, 6-1. I don't like to talk schedules. And drag me in. Eventually, we end up talking about schedules because we don't have games to play.
Yep.
You look at Nebraska's strength of schedule.
Yeah.
It's top 12 in the country. It's not so easy of a schedule anymore, is it?
No, but I still look at the last 4 and be like, yeah, they can win all those.
That's fine.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And we know way more about the schedule now.
That's totally fine.
Yeah.
But it's why I'm not enamored with
no, I get it.
Schedule
because we had no idea Indiana was going to be this.
But there's some people super pragmatic, right? They'll say, it's easy to see that you're at home and not on the road. You can at least admit that. I'm like, yeah, okay. Like I can entertain that.
Yeah, but how good has Nebraska been at protecting their home lately?
Not very.
Right?
But then if I say that, it's like, come on, entertain me. Humor me. Go along with it.
I just do it because I like to look at
don't let me talk you off.
Winnable versus not winnable.
Do your thing.
I'm not going to sit there for very many games, especially conference games, and be like, oh, that's an automatic win, right? I'm not going to do that. What I am going to do is be like, hey, this is a team probably like talent-wise where, like Illinois, like talent to Nebraska, maybe a little worse. That's a game I'm going to look at and say, hey, Nebraska's going to have an opportunity to win that game. Same thing with Indiana. Whether you thought Indiana was going to turn around as quick as they did or not, if you say you did, you're a liar. But nobody thought they were going to be this. I mean, liar.
But no, you're exactly right.
You look at it, you go, Indiana, okay, or maybe a little bit worse talent. Mm-hmm. Nebraska's going to have a chance to win that game, right? And they should have. Obviously, they didn't. But I think that's where Schedule Talk can be somewhat useful, just to like gauge where other teams are at compared to where you think Nebraska's at. But it's funny, you brought up, Rhule said something yesterday that's very similar to what you brought up with what Caleb was talking about. When he's talking about playing with confidence, that if I don't make mistakes, I'll win. But also
talking about how practice was like freeing and fun.
Yeah, also playing without being afraid of making those mistakes, right? Like that's a real tightrope.
Hey, so this is a small example. Mm-hmm. But remember I told you, like every time, and not to talk about Westside and Papio, but Papio came out of the gates and did some things in the run game where we're like, oh, fudge, right? Got us a couple times. You got to get the pads out. So what'd we do immediately? We kind of panicked. Mm-hmm. Hey, let's pressure this gap. Let's pressure this gap. Not thinking.
Kind of overreacted a little bit.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. Like we got to own that. Yeah. Right. And so we're like, hey, let's get into A gaps, or hey, no weak side. Just all these things we're talking about on the headset. And about halfway through the second quarter, like you could just tell our dudes were like, man, stop.
Because they thought they could just line up and beat them.
No, I don't know if that's what they thought.
Oh, okay.
I think they were probably more bothered by, like, who are we and what are we doing?
Oh, sure. Okay.
So just said at half, hey, we're going to play this front. We're going to stay in base. Got to play football. You got to win your one-on-ones, right? You see the land block here. Play it like just really, really, really basic. And they felt better. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, I was talking to some of our staff, Coach Queen in particular, because I call him probably every day. But and I asked him, I said, it's just weird. Last year we thought we could play base because we were just better. Mm-hmm. This year maybe we just play base because we can play faster.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah. So it's like, I don't know, but there is definitely something to.
It's like removing the muddle.
Yep. Playing where it's like, yeah, it's okay.
Yeah.
How about how he got into, I couldn't believe this. The psyche of a quarterback where you just like go play and you can make mistakes.
Yeah.
They've been saying this for almost a month, right? The whole, hey, don't turn it over, don't turn it over, don't turn it over. If we turn it over, it could be like detrimental.
Catastrophic, right?
Detrimental to our health, right? And so he's a smart guy. He picks up on it. Mm-hmm. So he's extra careful.
Yeah.
And I said, just imagine how freeing it'll be to just be like, we can overcome a mistake.
Yeah.
I'm going to take a shot because I trust my guy.
Yeah, when that's not
a thing.
Yeah.
I think you're going to see the real DR. And I think that's a lot of it.
Yeah.
I do. Like that speed out where he had Lloyd, man, cut that thing loose.
Yeah.
You have a hose.
Yeah.
You don't have to
which we haven't seen a ton of.
But yeah.
I know it's there. I've seen the high school tape.
Yeah.
But it's there.
Like let that bad boy rip.
Right.
I also like the fact that they got into, and I'm sure Coach Sat is going to get drilled today with questions. Mm-hmm. The difference between called plays, not called plays.
Check plays.
Check with me's.
Also, the difference.
So sometimes, and I'm actually getting this secondhand, but
Yeah.
it's from a very trusting source because he has a kid that plays, but some of it is miscommunication too. Like we think we see something and we want somebody to do this, and they may have not been sure if it's run versus pass because of so many check with me's.
Yeah.
And I had
So you're talking about like perimeter blockers.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh yeah, and some route concepts.
Yeah.
I mean, we get a lot of critics that like to whatever, but what's the name that we went with? So Dennis asked me a question last night.
Oh yeah, Denny.
Yeah, Denny, we forgot. And he said, he was being legit. And he said, so which side do I err on when it comes to execution? Coaching, coaches, or players?
Mm-hmm.
I said, well, as a coach, it's twofold. If it's implementation, it's probably coaching.
Mm-hmm.
If it's basics and fundamentals of like pet stuff, it's players.
Mm-hmm.
But I should have taken it one step further. It's always going to be on the coaches if you're either coaching it or allowing it.
Sure.
So even if it's fundamentals, because a lot of times I think we think you draw things up and you don't draw them up not to work.
Yeah.
Right? You assume best case scenario.
Right.
So there's like this fine line between panicking and scrapping versus saying, I know you can get this.
Like you don't drop quick pass game to the perimeter and say,
if we
misses
were up
the
in
block?
arms 3 games in a row last year when Nebraska couldn't finish late and they were inside the red zone and they were trying to run a smash concept versus running the ball. And I said, everybody in America runs this smash concept.
Mm-hmm.
They ought to be able to pull this
Should
off.
be able to do it.
And the pushback I would get was, well, they can't execute it. That's the coach's fault. I'm like, they can execute it. Like they could do this in their sleep. You have to get better at it. But it has to be an option though, because
otherwise everything else gets too easy to defend.
Yeah.
Right.
So there's like this.
There's kind of a tug of war.
Tug of war. It's a tug of war.
Yeah.
It's a total tug of war. So I'll be curious to see kind of the line of questions and the response because you can't really panic and you're not going to throw guys under the bus either.
Right.
And there's a reason he brought that up yesterday.
Yeah.
He had a chance to watch film.
Yeah.
And he even slid it in.
Well, he said it Saturday too.
He slid it in where he goes, sometimes these guys from an execution standpoint or, getting the job done, it's like guys want to look around and say, I got to take the heat off a sack. Got to take the heat off a Foley. And I was like, let me go back. Listen to it again. I was like, I wonder if there was kind of this come to Jesus moment with players where they're like, man, I'm kind of hanging my guys out to dry.
Yeah.
Right.
It's like
I got to feel the kickoff.
We like our guy.
I have to snap a ball better.
Yeah.
But then you have to pit it against. Well, shoot, man. I kind of like different running options inside the red zone. Now that's on the coaches.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So there's this.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's kind of this back and forth, but that's just coaching and playing though.
Yeah.
It's been like that through the test of time.
Well, and I think we said this yesterday, but I'm not going to sit here and pretend like I love every play call, right? Like if you've got 4 chances inside the 7, me, I want one of them to be a QB boot every single time. Yeah. I think that's a really good concept.
I wonder if they got gun shy with the boot that got tracked down against, was it Northern Iowa? Who did they run the naked boot with? And Dylan got stopped at like the 3.
Yeah, I think
it was going into the south end zone.
I think it was Northern Iowa.
Was it? There was sun still out. It's dumb that I can remember the scene.
No, because you can see it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I get it.
Was it Northern Iowa?
I think so. I don't remember that against UTEP or against
it might have been Northern Iowa.
I don't remember about.
And they were going to run the boot.
Yeah.
And kind of got tackled in the open field on the boot. And I'm like, I wonder if that made him a little gun shy. But you always like to have a play or two like that where they run pass option.
100%. And that's a concept that works so often.
But I wonder if that play kind of got them.
Yeah. Discouraged them a little bit.
Yeah, I'm not going to act like that doesn't happen to coaching staff.
Sure. You get in your head a little bit.
Yeah,
You're like, I tried that.
Yeah, you think you got something sweet lined up, and it's like, Yeah, that got diced up. Let's put that on the shelf.
Yeah. Anytime I'm inside the tent, I want a QB boot.
Yeah.
I need that sprinkled in
I
there.
could drop some exotic pressures for you all day long until they get snapped.
Right? You're like, oh, look at this. It's like, oh, shoot.
Yeah, that was cute.
Let's get to Alan real quick. He wants to talk about special teams. Alan, what's going on, man? Alan, go ahead.
Good morning, Alan.
Hey, good morning, Ravi. Good morning, DB. How you guys doing today?
Good. What's up,
Good.
buddy?
2 special teams questions for you guys.
Okay.
Doing the rewatch, and this has happened a couple times this year. Late in the third, we're punting from the 40, and we have our 2 gunners that run down to the goal line, don't track the ball. Buschini drops it at the 1, perfect punt.
Yeah.
We don't down them. Would have been back-to-back inside the 5s for the defense. So my question, DB, is in that situation when Ohio State's playing punt safe, they're not touching the gunners off the line.
Mm-hmm.
Would it make more sense to put Lloyd and Barney on the outside just because they're used to tracking the ball in the air?
Yeah,
in that
so
situation?
I love the thought process, right? You want guys that can actually track the ball in the air, but they practice that. So, but you're right. You're right. That one was at Memorial Stadium, and I was pretty bummed. No, it was. Was it a home game? The one where the gunner came free and the ball was kicked to the 2 and he let it go in the end zone. I almost think it was. I think it was in Lincoln. And
Might have been the Purdue game, DB.
Yep.
I think that may have happened against Purdue.
Good call.
Yep.
Yeah, it was Purdue, and I was like, shoot, that thing should have been down. So this is what happens. Sometimes and you have to rep it over and over, Alan. It's a fantastic question because you have to get out of the habit of being too self-conscious to run with your head up because you might get smoked versus knowing you have a free run to go find the football. Like it's just something you have to do because you're self-conscious that sometimes returners will peel back and smoke you. And I think it's a confidence thing, but tracking the ball in the air is definitely something that they practice. They do.
Alan, appreciate the call. We'll be back to set up the show.
That's a great question.
That is a good question.
Because it happens to Nebraska. Gunners needs to be more of a conversation.
We can have that conversation coming up. We'll also let you know who's coming up on the show. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla. It's Hurrdat Sports Radio. Welcome back. Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla here at Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill. Coming up on the show, we're going to talk to Mike Gross at 7:45. He covers Penn State for Lancaster Online. They've got the big one this weekend against the Buckeyes. Coming up at 8, we're going to talk to Vinnie Iyer. He covers the NFL for Sporting News. 8:45, we've got Robin Washut from Husker Online. Talk to him about all sorts of Nebraska things. Basketball season is about to kick off as well. And then we'll talk to Mike Schaefer of Husker 24/7 at 9 a.m., as we always do on a Tuesday. DB, you had a good night last night.
Yeah, it wasn't too bad. I mean,
3-0 in the World Series.
Padilla's Suns got us late, tricked off a lead.
I think you'll be okay in a Game 3 of the regular season NBA.
Hey, man.
I mean, you're not trading that for Game 3 of the World Series, right?
Nah.
You're that guy, you can have that one.
So I'm probably I'm gonna lose a lunch to you. Well, I won't lose. We'll just break it. I won't get it.
Yeah.
With Iowa. But
I mean, I still owe you the first one.
But I'm gonna break even with Dan too. I got a Yankees fan.
Because we didn't go double or nothing.
And I lost the first one. He got me on a regular season humbug Dodgers-Yankees game. And it was it's like 8:30 at night. It just kind of drifted. I don't know. Maybe it wasn't that late. He's like, hey. He may have even spotted me. We might have even been up.
Really?
No, I don't know. He's not that gracious. But so I was like, yeah, well, you're on. I lost. And then it's my buddy that comes and hangs out. He sits in the corner for breakfast.
Yeah.
But then he hit me with the World Series this time. And I was like, yeah, you're on. Right? And last night he asked me what I thought was going to happen. I said, I think the Dodgers will win. Mm-hmm. But the line says play the Yankees. I said something probably like 5-4. I go, but I will tell you, if Walker Buehler gets through the first 2 innings clean, he's going to be a problem.
You're in trouble.
Because what he's been doing is he's kind of gotten off to a little bit of a bumpy start. Then he's settled in.
Yeah.
So if you let him,
so you got to get him early.
Yeah, because he's still ramping. He's like in mid-season form right now. Yeah. For his health.
Yeah.
So and he was. I said, but if you let him get going, it's going to be a long night.
Yeah.
And it was.
And it was.
It was a long night. I wonder.
Were you nervous after the Verdugo homer at all?
He's a former Dodger. I mean, it's what he does.
Former Red Sox too.
Yeah. Which, by the way, are they channeling their inner Red Sox? I mean, 04 was a long time ago.
No, they're not.
No,
they're not special.
Out on 3-0 comebacks.
I mean, not all of them, but Yankees, yeah.
If the Dodgers weren't having a bullpen game tonight, you think they'd throw Cole?
You almost have to if it's like a regular matchup. I think. I mean, this is it. Like, what are you saving him for?
I think I haven't looked at the scores and odds. What is a bullpen game and an elimination game? The exact same line it was last night.
Really?
-148. That's crazy.
Yeah, that's nuts.
It's weird.
Unless you're just betting on the fact that like New York's looking at it, say, "Oh, we're down 0-3, that's it." Like, I don't know.
So this is the New York Yankees team that I talked about during the regular season. Wouldn't surprise me if they didn't get out of the division series, and it wouldn't surprise me if they won a World Series.
And they've done both in the same postseason.
Was that you? Who called their lineup outside of – this is before Stanton was even hitting, so this was a long time ago.
Yeah, it was me.
Was that called them the Miami Marlins?
I called them Kansas City with one extra guy.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, yeah. They're like
it's
their guys that are dudes are incredible.
It's flawed.
But it's not a deep lineup.
It's very flawed.
Like, even however you want to put it, whether it's like, okay, they've got 3 guys or 2 guys, it doesn't seem like all 3 of them ever hit at the same time. But like, it's not a deep lineup.
Boy, Judge is having he's in a
he's been like that in the postseason for a while, though.
And this is longer, I think, than I have to go back and double check, but I think it's longer than Barry Bonds' struggle stretch.
Yeah,
because Bonds, it took him some time to get off the schneid too. But this is abysmal.
It's horrifying,
and it's
like, that's your dude.
And he's not even having good at bats.
No, dude, the Yankees have had like kind of a history of some of their dudes doing this in the postseason, though. Like, I remember. Do you remember when like Alfonso Soriano just completly lost the ability to hit a baseball?
I like Soriano too.
Dude, he was a really good ball player.
That's funny because it was just he's one of those guys. Why'd you bring him up?
Because he was. I remember when they were playing the Red Sox in 2004, how I just was not afraid of him at all because he had the worst at bats.
He was one of those guys that I like for no reason that plays for a team I've never cheered for.
Yeah.
That is really weird. You bring him up.
He was a guy that during the regular season you feared him. He was incredible, but he had this stretch in the postseason over several years.
Yeah, that is a great pull.
Where, like you were saying with Judge, not only was he not hitting, but his at-bats were horrifying. I remember specifically, like, there's one pitch burned in my brain. It wasn't even I don't even think it was a breaking ball. I think it was a fastball, and he had to have missed it by 18 inches. Yeah. Like, just vertically.
He would do that.
Like, vertically. He just missed it by...
He's the epitome of a free swing.
And you're just like, oh, my God, how are you a Major League Baseball player?
Yeah,
But then the rest of the season, he's going 40-40 and whatever.
They're going to let the Dodgers could potentially win a World Series with minimal starting pitching and a World Series in which Shohei Ohtani basically took the postseason off.
Yeah. Well, not the whole postseason, just the World Series.
Well, I mean, he's been just okay outside of runners in scoring position.
Yeah, but you got Freddie Freeman just being,
Yeah, he's on a heater.
That dude.
He's on a heater.
Can I say this? And we didn't talk about this Monday because there was all sorts of Nebraska stuff going on. But as far as non-Red Sox games, Game 1, I was like more invested in that than I've been in a baseball game that I can remember like ever.
Yeah.
The non-Red Sox game. And like I was genuinely just ecstatic when Freeman hit that home run because it was like that's a cinematic moment right there.
So the housekeeping staff at where we stayed has a gift.
Yeah,
I didn't even say this because for dinner I had a little bit of calamari and
I love calamari,
lamb chops.
Yeah,
and I didn't eat a side, and it was like 5:15. So at like 9, I DoorDashed. Bob Evans was right next door, so I DoorDashed 2 breakfast sides of meat. I was so captivated by the game, I kicked the bag over in the morning when I was leaving because I forgot I ordered it. And what are you going to do with a side of bacon and a side of sausage? You're not going to put it in your backpack for the day. And I certainly wasn't going to eat. I was like, yeah,
well, that's a loss right there.
Couldn't even expense it. I was like, no. He's gonna have to eat this one.
Yeah.
But not literally.
Yeah.
So I left. I wrote a little note on the sticky. I was like, "Hey, hasn't been touched. It's still stapled." But yeah, I forgot because I was so into the game.
It was like I was genuinely invested. I was at a cigar place with a couple of buddies, and we're just like glued to it. Like we can't. Yeah. We were ready to go.
When you text late, I thought something was wrong.
No,
I was like, "Oh, he's giving me a baseball shot." Okay,
that was unbelievable.
You're like, "You got to be going nuts." I was like, "Yeah, I was."
I think I hit you with the holy bleep.
Hey, how about how I jumped on my bed back first to see if it would bounce me back to the floor?
It did not.
It did not.
It's not a trampoline, man.
It just went boom.
What'd you think?
I don't know. I was losing my mind.
It is kind of like that's one of the low key kind of weird things when you're watching a huge game by yourself and
I was just throwing myself.
Yeah, something like crazy happens, and then you just have nothing to do with your emotions. Yeah. Like one of the ones for me, it's a weird one. Is you remember the Steph Curry shot against OKC? Where he pulls like the 38-footer on Andre Roberson. Yeah. I'm by myself in my living room. This is like midnight on a weeknight or something. And he hits that shot and I just scream and jump out of my chair. And the only people around me were my dogs. They were like, "What the hell, man?"
I go over to the window because it's the outside because it's facing the parking lot. Like, you like that? I'm talking to no one. Absolutely no one.
You know what else I did it was when Malcolm Hartzog had the pick on Saturday, and I was like, "Oh, he's taking this to the house." I was like by myself, and I was screaming.
I jinxed him. I hit Sharpie. Way to go, baby.
One of my dogs was like, "I'm not doing this." Ran straight up the stairs. Like, I'm not about this life. Coming up next, we're going to talk a little Penn State, Ohio State. Good morning. Welcome back to Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla. We are joined now by Mike Gross, who covers Penn State for Lancaster Online. Mike, how are you this morning?
I'm great. How you guys doing?
We're good. This is for a little, station tucked here in Nebraska, man, talking all things Big Ten. We probably talked more Penn State than anybody in the area, primarily, Mike, because I see the rankings and I see the defensive prowess, and I'm still thinking to myself, I don't feel like I know this team very well. For you, and maybe you don't pit it against the national perception in the rankings. Who is or how good is Penn State in your opinion?
Well, I kind of feel the same thing. I don't feel like I have a great handle on this team, and I spent a lot of time. I sort of feel like offensively, they're tricking people a little bit. That's how they're getting it done. This new offensive coordinator, Andy Kotelnicki, it's a lot of fun to watch some of the stuff they do, and he's very creative, and I think he has aced the test so far. He's been tremendous, but I wonder if they can just line up and run the ball without any other element. You know what I mean? They did that very effectively against Illinois. That was the dominant element in that game. That was a month ago. Since then, they've struggled to run it against just okay UCLA, USC, just okay run defenses. And then last week, this wild card factor of the backup quarterback, who is a runner, that seemed to he had to go in the game because Drew Aller got hurt, and that seemed to unlock the running game in the second half. So I mean, it's not all running game by any means. I'm not saying that, but I'm having a hard time getting the handle on him too. I'm with you on that.
Mike, as you kind of look how this team has gone through their schedule, you mentioned some of the games. Really the only game that the score has looked impressive was that Kent State game. So you kind of just chalk that up as that's Kent State, whatever.
Oh, yeah.
But
factored in the opponent there.
Yeah, right. But you look at all these other ones, it's like, man, they're playing a lot of really close ball games, but like they just seem to they literally just keep winning them all. How do you kind of weigh, it doesn't maybe look the way you would think against some of these teams, but they're still sitting here undefeated and top 3 in the country. Like you take that, right?
Well, they one of the things about it is you look you look underneath them in the rankings and you say, who would you put ahead of them?
Yeah.
Right now. I mean, there might be some people that I would arguably put ahead of them, but based on pure resume, I'm not sure. That's kind of how it is right now in this sport. So the sport is changing a little bit. The other thing I would say is two things about Penn State this year. They have got off to a lot of slow starts.
Yep. Yeah.
Excuse me. A lot of, stumbling out of the gate kind of thing, which I'm not sure how to explain that. They've made tremendous adjustments at halftime. Their defense has been almost ridiculously dominant in the third quarters of games for some reason. And I would say the other thing is they've faced a lot of long fields. They have not won the field position battle in many games. There's been so many times when they've had to go 90 yards, 85 yards to score, and that sort of has changed the mix of the game because they have had explosive plays. That hasn't been a problem. Kodal Mickey was brought in to a large extent to solve that problem, and he mostly has. But those two things, the constant long fields and the stumbling out of the starting gate, I can't explain either of those things, but that's why the scores, I think, haven't looked great.
Yeah, Mike, I wouldn't apologize for that. I played on a team in '94 that has looked pretty, but there's two things that I like that Penn State does that I think matter. Number one, listen to your pressers, and I get it. I mean, Coach Franklin has had some other issues he's dealt with during press conferences, but you don't apologize for winning. And something you brought up, which is very understated, your defense can turn folks' lights out in a hurry, and they do it for an extended period of time. It's almost like they can flip this switch, and you just cannot. I mean, that's SC, and that wasn't the first team they had done it to. They all of a sudden say, okay, all right, we're good. You're not moving the ball anymore.
Yeah, that's right. They have. It does seem like they've reached a point in the game where they just close the door. I'm not sure if that's Tom Allen making adjustments, because if you watch this game on Saturday, a guy to watch is Abdul Carter, the defensive end, who they move him around a lot. And I think a lot of that is game plan specific and what's this team do? Let's figure out what this team is doing to us, and then we'll move him around. We'll make him almost like a middle linebacker. Sometimes they make him almost like a defensive tackle. Sometimes they have him spy against a mobile quarterback. Sometimes they use him as a blitzer. He's a guy that the NFL people are really high on. He is a spectacular player. They have a couple of other guys, Jalen Reed at safety and Zane Durant, a defensive tackle. Watch him. He's an unusual guy. He's not this huge hulking defensive tackle. And also, he wears number 28, which is weird for a defensive tackle. But anyway, watch that guy. He is a kind of an underrated player. And the overall speed on their defense, I think, is comparable to anybody in the country. And once they sort of figure out what they're doing defensively, they can be pretty dominant.
Mike, I do have to bring up, there was that super strange press conference before the game. And was there any part of you heading into that Wisconsin game that was just a little bit concerned about, I guess, the distraction or sort of the tone of the team?
Well, it's a good question, but honestly, the answer is no, and I'll tell you why. Yeah. This incident with two players, a sexual assault incident. It happened in July. In early August, less than a month later, these kids were kicked out of school. I mean, not kicked off. It's not like they had to run sprints or do up downs or anything. They kicked them out of school, and so just the fact that the criminal charges came down last week, that's the only reason it came up in the press conference. I honestly think in terms of the players, I think this has been off their radar for months. Forever, they kicked them out of school 3 months ago. I'm not downplaying the significance of it, believe me. But as
just
far
internally, it's been processed already.
Yeah, and again, they're gone. They were kicked out of school almost 3 months ago. So I do. I think it's sort of over and done with.
This is an interesting matchup coming in. It's obviously a big game. And which Ohio State team do you think you're getting? Because I know coming into this one and stopping the run, Nebraska was really, really good against those condensed sets and winning at the line of scrimmage. Penn State's defensive line is twitchy. It's active. You wreak havoc. But you do know that it's Judkins and Henderson, and they can get creative. Like, which Ohio State team are you looking forward to seeing based on how you guys like to play?
Well, I think they're going to try to grind a little bit, as you suggested, with those two running backs. I think Penn State and Ohio State are very similar in the respect that they have these two really good running backs. I mean, that's a big piece of it. And I think Ohio State probably has the edge in the offensive line. I think they're a little bit better than Penn State's offensive line. So and I think just in general, even if you look at the defensive side, they're a more physical, sort of tough team than you think of Ohio State. You think of Ohio State, you think of insane wide receivers and throwing the ball to these guys that are constantly open and just running away from the defense. The last couple of years, they've been a little different than that, and I think we could see a little bit more of that style of football on Saturday. But again, Ohio State has a big edge at wide receiver. I don't think there's any question about it. I think that is kind of the flaw of this Penn State team. And as always, it is a huge strength, and especially with this freshman kid, Jeremiah Smith. Is that his name?
Yeah.
Especially with him and Ibuke and all. I just think that's where Ohio State has met.
All right, so let me ask you, emotionally, would you rather be Penn State knowing Franklin is kind of get over the Michigan-Ohio State hump, or Ryan Day, who had the Boo Birds come out a week ago and has answered questions about just how good they are?
Well, I think from the psyche of the two coaches, if that's the question, the psyche of the two coaches, I think I would rather be James Franklin. From the psyche of because I mean Franklin is, this is just, he has to see this as a great opportunity. I mean, this is a great opportunity, and even if you lose, you're still right in the middle of this playoff race.
Like Ohio State is favored. You know what I mean? Like they're favored on the road. It's just it's just like
3.5. Yeah. Whereas if it's almost a back to the wall moment a little bit for Ohio State. I mean, if they lose, they're kind of on the bubble for the playoff. And also Ohio State. I mean, their fan base is just insane, and it's the heat on Ryan Day is a little bit absurd, but it's because of the incredibly high standard that they've set at Ohio State. So, from the standpoint of a psyche thing, I think it's a better situation for James Franklin. But for Ohio State, for the football team, their backs are to the wall, and I fully expect them to come out and play like it.
That's Mike Gross, covers Penn State for Lancaster Online. Mike, we appreciate it. We'll talk to you again soon.
Thanks, Mike.
Thanks, fellas.
More Hurrdat Sports Radio coming up next. Kicking off hour number 2 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, and ESPN Tri-Cities. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla here at Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill. We're joined now by Vinnie Iyer. He covers the NFL for Sporting News. Vinnie, how are you this morning?
Hey, doing well. Thanks for having me, guys.
Hey, good morning, Vinnie.
I got to ask you, Vinnie, is it funny, ironic, or something else that the minute Deshaun Watson leaves the building, the Browns become a functional football team?
Yeah, I think it's surprising, I'll say that. And I just look at the Browns, and all of a sudden they seem to respond better all around. I mean, the body language is bad. I mean, the Amari Cooper situation to the point where he wasn't interested in being there, and I don't know what it was, but now I think you have a better understanding is that Deshaun Watson was dragging down some of the things that were going on with his team, and they were reluctant to make this change without the injury. And all of a sudden, there was a completely different Browns team. They just seemed to be playing more inspired. They were all ready to make plays. They saw their rival on the field, and they were just ready for that game. But you haven't seen it in several weeks. And they were also energized. And Jameis Winston doing these speeches that get them fired up. So I don't know. Deshaun Watson was just maybe not leading the way that he needed to, on top of not playing well.
How every time I see a Jameis Winston speech, I just wonder, like, how does anyone take that man seriously?
He's like a character of himself, but people, it's almost like they know that that's just Jameis, Vinnie. That
they respond to it.
That must play.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit like the redemption that you're seeing with Baker Mayfield and all these guys that were the number one picks, is they were humbled a bit, right? I mean, Jameis Winston has definitely been a lot more humble than some of these other guys, where he was the guy for a while with the Tampa Buccaneers, but then it was just here's Tom Brady winning a championship, here's Baker coming in, then he's trying to find his way with the Saints, couldn't quite handle the Drew Brees transition there, even though he played well for a little while. So, man, when these guys get humbled and they're trying to show their teammates, look, we have something left here to keep playing and being inspired, I think people respect that a little bit more sometimes than just the guy that has everything, with Deshaun Watson getting all the money guaranteed, not playing anything up to that level.
He's racking up touchdowns in a hurry the last 3 weeks. He hasn't turned the ball over either. Should Jalen Hurts be getting the flowers considering all the criticism that he received? He's playing at a high level these last handful of weeks, winning 3 in a row.
Yeah, I think the thing with Jalen Hurts is it's going to take time with any offensive system to completely get immersed in it. And there was a bit of a hiccup there. I mean, not having A.J. Brown for a few games, not having A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith for one game. Now they've had to readjust without Dallas Goedert for some time. But I think the Eagles just are trying to figure out what type of team they are in terms of their offense. And I think they finally got it, where they want to be malleable to whoever their opponent is. Like if they're trying to take away the run and stick on Barkley, you can open up the passing game and you can run with the Jalen Hurts. If they're kind of protecting against the deep ball with Devonta and AJ, then you're like, okay, we'll just run it down your throat here with a kind of a softer front. So I think the Eagles are doing a better job of adapting and adjusting than they did last year. And a lot of that credit goes to Kellen Moore. And again, you're seeing that happening. If you go back to any of the numbers, I know the Chargers were a little bit of an outlier, but you go to the Cowboys with Kellen Moore. I mean, this is the type of offense they ran. It was pretty dangerous, and they could do a lot of things with multiple guys. And that's what you're seeing finally kind of come together. And that's why they made the change to Moore for Jalen Hurts.
Yeah, it's interesting, too, because two of the guys you mentioned, A.J. Brown and Smith, they had the highest catch rate over expected catch outcome in the NFL. So not only is the offense coming along, they're making plays for their quarterback, too. Some of the stuff they come down with is incredible.
Yeah, and sometimes you don't need to be perfect. You just need to get the ball somewhere there. And we've seen that for Russell Wilson for sure, right? He's not perfect, but he's getting the ball somewhere in the vicinity of George Pickens or whoever's getting downfield to make those plays. And that's sometimes what you have to do as a quarterback. And, we look at quarterbacks who are cutting down on interceptions. I'll give you a good example. It's like we look at Derek Carr, and sometimes he plays well. But sometimes we don't look at the plays where they could have been made, right? If they took a shot, threw the ball downfield, that's the thing we'll never see. And that's a stat that it's really hard to keep, right? Because you can't see everything that's going on downfield. But it's kind of a thing that you look at as the missed throws. It's kind of like when we're watching a batter and there's a fastball down the middle, you kind of track if they foul it off or just miss it or ground out or pop up versus when they hit a home run. So I think that's kind of the hidden part of the game, is like sometimes you need to be aggressive and trust your receivers even if they're covered.
Vinnie, how much credit do you have to give Mike Tomlin, who's sitting there at 4-2 with Justin Fields as a starter and doesn't bat an eye, to be like, yeah, no,
these are my guys, Vinnie. I love the question.
We're going with Russ. I don't care what any of you people say.
Yeah, I mean, he knows his team better than anyone else, and I think you have to just give him credit. I mean, this guy just keeps winning no matter what. I mean, I think after last year, when you had Kenny Pickett and Mitchell Trubisky and Mason Rudolph, and this team was still a playoff team, you said those are your three quarterbacks, and they had these type of numbers, and you said this team made the playoffs, like you think this is crazy, right? But this year, I think he played it perfectly. I think you look at Justin Fields, he did what they needed to do early when they had certain matchups, and their defense was playing well. But their defense was having a few issues last night, right? They were
couldn't stop the run out of the spread sets.
Yeah, so their defense is not perfect, but the way you get them into what they do best, rush the passer, what do? You put pressure on the team that you're playing by scoring points and being able to stretch the field. And the funny thing is, I think they also noticed that they were not great in the red zone. They're still not great in the red zone. They're just not a red zone team when you have, I think Pat Frymouth is actually better down the seam receiver, and you also have Pickens, who's definitely a big play receiver, right? You don't have that guy that's just going to get open in the red zone, and they have trouble running it in the red zone for some reason. So that's still going to be an issue, but if you're scoring some long touchdowns to offset that, that's going to help you. And Fields just was not capable of producing those long touchdowns that Wilson gets.
Hey, going forward, and you may want to project this into 2025, but if you're the general manager, would you rather be the Bengals or the Cowboys?
Well, I think the Bengals are actually in better shape. If you look at the bigger picture. Well, the Cowboys, I mean, they backed themselves in the corner. They're going to have to pay a lot to Micah Parsons now. Now he's hurt. And they're just locked into some of these contracts. So they don't have a lot of freedom and flexibility where I think the Bengals realize that some of these contracts are getting too rich here. I think I would expect them to move on from T. Higgins, this guy again. On top of everything else, he's critical to what they do, but he can't stay on the field very often. I mean, these injuries just pop up in the middle of the week, and then he's not on the field. So I think they can move on. They still have their franchise quarterback in Joe Burrow. They paid him. They'll pay Jamar Chase. They'll be more calculated who else they pay on that team. But I think the Bengals are just in better shape because they have Burrow. And right now, I mean, you trust a little bit about what's around Burrow than you trust what's around Dak Prescott. And when I say that, it's not just CeeDee Lamb. It's the offensive line. It's the running game, all that. I think right now the Bengals are well positioned to kind of reboot, make that transition. That's what you really have to do, honestly. Like, the Chiefs are able to do it at a high level once they paid Patrick Mahomes. You're seeing the Bills figuring that out, right? Once they paid Josh Allen, it took them a little bit of time to do that and figure out what kind of team you want. So it's going to happen. But the Cowboys, I think, just with Jerry Jones, they just are trying to please everybody with the money, and sometimes it's going to really strap you in a lot of places.
Maybe I'm just I see what I want to see, but Vinnie, I'm outside of my buddy Ryan, who's the only Cardinals fan I know in the area. In the offseason, I talked about he should have been comeback player of the year last year, and I get the whole Flacco phenom. He won one more game, whatever. But I was big on Kyler Murray's resurgence this year. He's off to a great start. They're 4-4. It's a little ugly and clunky at times, but should he get a little more praise for the criticism that he took early in his career? He's playing at a pretty high level.
Yeah, what's happening with Kyler Murray is the fact that you have Lamar Jackson playing well, you have Jalen Hurts playing well, you've got Jaden Daniels coming in, and the Cliff Kingsbury offense. I think you get overshadowed quickly with that style of quarterback. And Josh Allen isn't throwing over an interception, right? Those running quarterbacks who can throw downfield. And Kyler Murray's got as much talent as any of them, right? But I think what you're just seeing is it's hard to figure out what team is really got the best quarterback right now overall. Patrick Mahomes is the guy that's got the rings, but if you looked at right now the way he's playing, it's not at the highest level. And Joe Burrow's in a bad team, but he's playing as well as he can. And then you have these guys that are dual threats that are being awesome. So Kyler Murray, I think, would be getting more attention if you didn't just have all this buzz about some other quarterbacks here. But I'm excited because, again, the Cardinals, they have a shot to maybe if they get their defense better, that they're going to be in contention. Yeah, that's going to be the thing. Can they shore up the run defense at some point, stop the big plays by other quarterbacks? I don't think there's any problem with their offense to try to win games, but their defense is what worries me maybe the second half of the season more as they try to stay in first place in the West.
So now is it probably more imminent that they try to hang on to Budda Baker?
Yeah, it's very funny because we saw these teams that were kind of about to be sellers, the Rams, the Cardinals, these teams like everyone's like, oh, trade your entire team. Get rid of them. They're not good. I mean, really the only teams that qualify under that, the Panthers don't have a lot of guys that have value for others, especially with Deontay Johnson and Abdiel hurt. And that's a Titans. They already made that move with DeAndre Hopkins. But there's not a lot of sellers. And I think we want to desperately try to turn the NFL trade deadline to the MLB trade deadline, right? This team is bad. They're out of contention. This guy's going to be a free agent. Trade him down the stretch. It's never going to be that way, right? These players that were traded, I mean, they're more anomalous, like with Adams and Cooper. They're just guys that I think, yeah.
Kansas City bolstering their linebacking core yesterday, right?
Yeah,
it's like
that's a simple trade that you can move, right? I mean, Josh Uche is a plug-and-play guy. He's a rotational guy. Those are the type of guys you pick up, and really that's how they approach baseball too, right? You get some bench guys, an extra arm, somebody to be a fielder when you need it in a clutch situation for the playoffs. So that's how you kind of approach it. But we're like, hey, trade this guy, Cooper Kupp going across and going to, like, we all fall into it. People care about it. I get it once the rumors start to swirl. But in the end, I just don't think it's that buyer seller so simple, right? I mean, the Rams give up Cooper Kupp. That's just giving up Cooper Kupp, period, right? You're not going to get it back where a lot of these cases with the MLB that they're a free agent and a lot of these teams can sign them back if they really wanted them and they're kind of borrowing them. So it's very interesting that there's so much interest about the trade deadline, but the Adams-Cooper things to me are outliers. I think they were just not happy at all in their situations and they wanted out and the teams were budged.
We're talking with Vinnie Iyer of the Sporting News. Vinnie, I wanted to kind of return to something you had said about Deshaun and how the entire Browns organization was kind of being like sucked into this negativity surrounding Deshaun and being pulled down by him. Could I make the argument the same thing's happening with the Jets and Aaron Rodgers?
Well, that division stinks, though. Wow.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely is. I mean, I think, I don't know if you can say, I mean, we'll take Russell Wilson and the Broncos out of it because I think the Broncos just weren't ever the right fit for him, and now we see that the Steelers are. But when you look at that, yeah, you can't invest too much in a quarterback that's going to try to dictate the action or you're locking it too much to him, like, and catering too much to him. So that's what's happened to the Jets. They've catered to Aaron Rodgers way too much. I mean, I blame the owner a bit, Woody Johnson, trying to do this right. Like, you're picking the quarterback over the coach, and the coach is doing his best. I mean, you see what's happening of late. Their defense is falling apart. I mean, Robert Saleh was important to keeping that defense. I know they have the coordinator taking over, but it's harder when that coordinator also has to manage all the parts of the team, right? You're not, so that's just not that's probably unfair to Jeff Ulbrich, where he was trying to prepare his team week in and week out. Saleh had more of the organizational stuff. So I don't know, like, and not knowing what trades were going on or what moves were going on and having a disconnect between everyone in the front office and the coaching staff. Like, it's really disappointing because I think they had so much promise, but yeah, they got a little bit manipulated by Aaron Rodgers pretty badly, and the owner is there to blame. Where I think the GM, Joe Douglas, is very good. I feel like if something happens and they get rid of him too, he's going to land somewhere and that really make the team happy.
Vinny, I'm going to put you on the spot here a little bit because you said something that kind of made my ears perk up about catering to a quarterback. Off the top of your head, can you ever remember that working?
No, it's tough to make that work. I mean, you also don't want to go the complete other way.
Sure.
The Broncos were anti-Russell Wilson the whole time and didn't really do anything to help him. So, like, it does happen quite a bit in this league. I think teams are so desperate to win. I think what's happened to the Jets is they've failed so miserably, right, with their quarterback decisions that they try to do this. Well, sometimes you have to take the 49ers approach. Okay, you didn't have Trey Lance that worked. So the Garoppolo, just draft guys, and you don't know. And you'll find a Brock Purdy or Dak Prescott or Russell Wilson. Draft guys that have some potential, and you might have a shot here. But, yeah, I mean, I think they've been too all in on some quarterbacks here. They probably were again. Tasty saw with Geno Smith and Sam Darnold. Several years removed from the Jets, look what they're doing right now. So maybe it's an organizational thing where they were just like, oh, we can't get quarterback to work, so let's just get Aaron Rodgers in the end of his career and try to make it happen. And I think the Jets, again, they have to go back to the drawing board and probably draft a quarterback, but they can't let this Aaron Rodgers thing continue beyond this year.
Vinnie, I'll get you out of this. I get that, in the AFC, it's easy to ride on the Chiefs' shoulders, right? They have the best player and a ton of success. But, gosh, I seriously would make the case that the two worst divisions belong in the American Football Conference. Is the AFC as top-heavy as some would have you to believe, or do you like more of the balance in the National Football Conference?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, you look at the AFC, and the one thing that is happening, and there's definitely a lot of that going on, where I think the Souths are still pretty bad in both conferences.
Yeah.
So if you cross over and play the South, or whoever's playing the Souths in any form, are going to be a bit inflated, and that's how you start. But when you look at the AFC, yeah, it's pretty weak when you look at Denver and Los Angeles having a shot to make the playoffs. I mean,
hey, Denver's 5-3. I'm like,
yeah,
really?
But you look at this. If you start diving into the schedule, we're like, oh, they're playing the NFC South, right?
Yep.
And there's 3 wins that are sitting on the table now at this point, right? The state of the Buccaneers.
They beat the Saints, the Panthers, and the Raiders, and the Jets.
Yeah,
those are 4 of Denver's wins.
Yeah, so that's what's happening, right? I mean, there are some bad teams, and these schedules have aligned for some of these teams. Like, I'm not taking anything away from the Commanders either, but a lot of things have aligned for the Commanders, right?
And they get the Steelers next.
Yeah, so, I mean, that'll be a great game, I mean, for sure, after the Steelers bye. So I'm looking forward to that. But yeah, these teams do have back-heavy schedules, whatever, but that's what you'll see in the second half. Like, you'll see which teams really belong. And I think the other thing that happened with the Jets is sometimes you don't want too high profile. Like, they need to be a little bit under the radar, because what happens in the NFL, I think this is one of the most underrated things in the NFL that people don't see, is the fact that the marquee teams, they try to put them front-loaded with a lot of tough games. And it's hard to dig out of that. So I think the Cowboys fall into that. They still have a tough schedule ahead. It's brutal to look at it. But I think some things just align in the schedule that you don't expect for teams, where their opponents just become really bad, or injuries just kind of wipe out an opponent that seemed to be good, right? And then you run into teams like the Cowboys that are just facing a brutal schedule. So I don't know. Like, I think if you look at it, I mean, the Jets' schedule on the back end is pretty favorable, but the damage has already been done. When they've played this gauntlet of teams early, it's hard to recover from that.
That's Vinnie Iyer from the Sporting News. Vinnie, we appreciate the time. As always, we'll catch up again soon.
Thanks, Vinnie.
All right, thank you. Thank you, guys.
That's Vinnie Iyer from the Sporting News.
I think I'm giving you my flowers on Kyler Murray, too.
No. I wasn't hating on Kyler Murray.
That was a great call by me.
It was. I wasn't hating on him, though.
Yes, you were.
Not like some people. I was like, he's fine.
Man. All right.
All of a sudden, Cliff Kingsbury can coach offense again, though?
He could always coach offense. He just wasn't a great head coach.
Yeah, that's true.
How about speaking of flowers, you going to give Dion his?
No. I do think Colorado's pretty good, though.
Oh.
Like, I'll give.
What is wrong with you?
A lot.
No.
I'll give. No. Colorado. I said this right after Nebraska played them, because defensively, I was actually kind of impressed.
Yeah,
by
they
Colorado.
brought the wood, didn't they?
Yeah, they were super physical.
We talked about that. I was shocked how they kept smacking.
Yeah, they were a really, really physical team. And so, yes, all jokes aside, I do have to give Dion credit. That Colorado team's a lot better than I thought they were going to be. And credit to making some adjustments from last year. Like, that last year was a bad football team.
Yeah.
Like, it was a bad football team. I don't think the talent's that much better.
Well, they still can't really run the ball.
Yeah, they've got some limitations for sure, but I thought this very easily could have been another 4-8 football team.
Everybody did.
And
quietly next to Indiana.
Yeah.
It might be the best story in college football.
Like, they've done a really good job. Shador's gotten better. Obviously, Travis Hunter's still really good. But, you have to give credit to Deion for making some adjustments on the staff. I still don't like the way he operates like that. But I don't like the way Cignetti operates either. And they're pretty good.
Well,
he's a real Dean Blandino. He is.
What does bolstered mean?
I'm not going to go that far.
I don't think
when you go in, you just go in. Huh?
Dude, that's the least far I could go with Cignetti. All the other things you're not allowed to say on air.
It's pretty simple.
I'm pretty simple.
What is it, Shane? I didn't catch that.
I'm a Dean Blandino.
What is
Went to bed, woke up, played 3:30, kicked their ass.
Yeah, he's something else.
Yeah, not a fan.
It's pretty
really
pretty
good,
simple. I win.
Really good football coach. Like, I'm not taking that away, but I wouldn't want to hang out with him. No, it was. I'll give you credit on. I guess I'll give you credit on Kyler. I guess I don't.
Yeah,
all of a sudden that
you could hang out with him. You just need an out after like 10 minutes. Like,
No.
I got something to do. I got to get out of here.
I don't want to. No, I wouldn't want to hang out with Cignetti for even 10 minutes. He seems like a dude that is miserable to be around. I don't want to hang out with that guy. Not even a little bit. I don't want to hang out with Deion either, but that's for different reasons.
I'd hang out with Deion.
Yeah, it's
but I told you that.
You're like a child of his, like, of him being Deion, though. Like, anybody that grew up watching Deion be Deion, like, has a total blind spot for that guy.
But I can parse through it.
You can see why I don't like him.
I look at all his Instagram stories too. I think he's hilarious.
Man, you look at everybody's stories.
I'm not even trying to pick that fight again because we were not getting along during the Deion's discussions.
You love Deion, big Deion.
Knock it off. Knock it off.
I think that's how you run a program. That's DB. I'm Ravi. Lulla. We'll be back with more Hurrdat Sports Radio. I know DB can be distracting, but if you're driving, try and keep your eyes and focus straight ahead. As a driver,
I don't appreciate that.
You've got one job to do. That is to drive. Make sure you are focused. It's a message from the NDOT Highway Safety Office. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla. It's Hurrdat Sports Radio. Why don't you appreciate that, DB?
Because I'm not distracted.
I think you can be distracting.
To
other people.
That's fine.
I'm not saying you're distracted. You're usually pretty locked in.
Hey, do you think our guy thinks I'm nuts, Logan?
Yeah, 100%.
So I'm not like, I don't make up. Like, what you hear is how it really goes down.
When I tell people that you don't sleep, I'm not kidding.
Yeah, no, I know.
Like, you do not sleep.
No, 100%.
Like, there's a reason you watch so much more stuff than I do, and I watch a lot of stuff.
I remember one time, this was probably 6 or 7 years ago.
Yeah.
Dirk was like, Chatelain, he was like, there's no way you're really watching these sports. I was like, way.
Yeah.
Way.
Because you don't sleep.
Well, it's not by choice.
Right. I'm just saying you're up, so you watch it.
Yeah.
Hey.
It's like yesterday, it was a good excuse. It was a very emotional day at the school.
Yeah.
It's going to be emotional for a while. I was struggling with tons. And so my heart was, it was just uneasy.
Yeah.
Right. And then the Dodgers and Steelers played. I didn't eat, like, I didn't have, my appetite was all sorts of screwed up. So I didn't really like sit down, and it was the worst made up dinner ever. I would not do that again. I was in a pinch and I just wanted proteins. I mean, I woke up hungry.
Yeah.
So when I went to bed, I was like, you know what? I'm not sleeping. And I didn't watch any of the Suns and the Lakers real time. So I wanted to see it. So when Logan said, and this is what I'm talking about. When I say, sometimes people will say things to you and it's like, I don't like what he said. But I always try to say, hey, is there any truth in what he said? So Logan sent a DM, and he didn't send it until 10:23.
Yeah.
In my defense.
Yeah.
He said, hey, just wanted to say you guys had one of your best shows I've heard. Sometimes you guys come off as condescending or belittling towards fans, and I think a lot of that is because you give too much credit to some of these Twitter trolls or callers who can't even pronounce the players' names correctly. It's hard to take what a lot of these people say serious when they can't name a backup offensive lineman or one of the many D linemen who play 10 to 15 snaps, and they want to sit on here and talk about scheme or who should be fired. So I could totally eat the meat and spit out the bones.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, all right, I think I like Logan. So what was my response to him? I said, hey, just wanted to say, wait, what did I said? I appreciate the perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Especially the too much credit part. Thanks for the kind words about yesterday's show.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought to myself, I said, Self, don't answer. You're not very smart. Let's ask Ravi. He's even less smart.
Appreciate that.
So I said to you this morning, hey, does Logan probably think I'm crazy? You said, I'm sure.
Absolutely. Yeah, without a doubt.
Because I didn't respond to him until 3:05.
3 a.m., yeah.
Yeah, which is fine. I was watching television when he first sent it, so I didn't see it. But anyway, I said, do you think he has a point about his first notion? Because maybe we do.
That we give too much credit to the negative.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I also felt like there was this stretch where a couple of people in the stream were like, you know why that is, right? It's because you guys are beacons for negativity.
Mm-hmm.
Now, and I also agree with that.
Yeah, it's certainly possible. Yeah, and to be honest, Logan and I have had some conversations prior to this that he sent to both of us.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, and so
Sorry, Logan.
And he had brought this up.
I try to get back to people
kind of before, and so about how he didn't totally love the tone of some of the shows and whatever. And I'm like, listen, I get that. I do.
Oh, I'm glad he said that to you and not me.
And I tried to do the same thing. I'm a little more reactionary than you are sometimes. But I tried to, I took a minute to respond because, like, in the moment, I was like, felt some kind of way about it.
I feel some type of way.
But I also know that we're not making it up. Like, these people exist, and they exist pretty loudly in our sphere, right? And so part of the reason I feel the need to address them is, first of all, I think it's irrational and illogical, and that typically bothers me, right? So
you know what you need before you finish?
What's that?
There was a great sermon on Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
It's called Friends and Followers,
mm-hmm.
and it was about like social media and who's with you and who's not, and how sometimes you have to. He basically surmised it into fishing with the three and with Dan and they kept casting nets all night and they weren't catching anything, and sometimes you need people to just be able to ride with you when you're casting a net
mm-hmm.
and it's no bueno,
yeah.
versus the folks that only want to ride with you when you have fish.
Mm-hmm.
This is what this reminds me of.
Yeah. And I took a minute to respond to Logan, but I'm very cognizant of the fact that this fan base can get super toxic, right? That's not a judgment or an indictment. It can.
I wanted to show Logan my mentions from Saturday.
Yeah, it can.
Saturday morning, I was like, wow. I looked at Ben and I go, this must be one of those days. And
I
told
get
him,
sideways.
Yeah, gamification though. I told him, I said, I'm not letting it get to me.
Yeah.
I said, during this broadcast, I said, we're gonna homer this thing up.
Mm-hmm.
We're gonna try to provide insight. He dapped me up, and even early when it was like bleak,
mm-hmm.
I'm like, this couldn't have started any worse.
Yeah.
But then I had to look at it like, hey, you know what? Shoot, if you're looking for a way to have to overcome, why not have this piss poor of a start? Like,
it certainly gives you something.
You got opportunity. You hit a punt. You inexplicably filled one you shouldn't. You
bobble the opening
kickoff. Like, okay.
There's
but the whole morning, and it was early.
Yeah.
I was EST, man, getting hit up with, well, why isn't Coach Rhule with the team on the 50? I don't know, man. Like, I just snapped it when I did.
Yeah, he's doing other stuff. Like, it's fine.
That's a great question.
Gonna be a long day for you, DB. Man, I control that, right? I'm not gonna speak that into existence.
Where like there's a level of irrationality and illogicalness that I just try and address. Be like, hey, okay, you're mad about this. You tell me you want somebody fired. What's the next step? That's why I brought up the Glenn Thomas thing, right? It's not to say that Glenn Thomas can't coach. It's to say, like, okay, you hear all these people saying fire Sat or take play calling away and give it to Glenn Thomas. It's Like, hey, the analytics on Glenn Thomas aren't better than the analytics on Satterfield in terms of a play caller. So, like, I need to know the next step. If you're going to be mad, don't just be mad. Give me the next step. That's the thing that bothers me a lot. So I like to address that. The other thing is, like, to me, this is about Coach Rhule. My affinity for Coach Rhule and the way he does things. And I don't want people to...
You want to defend Coach Rhule?
Yeah, I don't want... And not just defend him, but...
He said, yeah.
Almost, sounds weird, because I almost want to protect him.
No, I get it.
That's the thing that I think...
I actually kind of get that.
Like, I want to protect him from the thing that I know can get toxic. It's not that I don't think he can handle it, but I don't want to lose this thing that we get from him with so much transparency and telling us how the process goes. Because I don't think he's going to check out on us. Mm-hmm. I do think he's like, I might tighten the circle a little bit. I might tighten things up a little bit, not give you guys as much, right? Because he's alluded to this, earlier in the season. Like, maybe I'm a little too transparent with you guys. Sometimes I tell you guys a little too much, right? And maybe it's not in his DNA to stop doing that, but I love that about him. And I'm afraid that if we can't handle it or don't handle it better, we're going to lose it.
Yeah, so part of the reason for my anger when I was coming down off of 88 stories or however high B-Mac put me up there is because I felt like people were not going to handle the press conference well.
Yeah.
And I was like, man.
And some people didn't.
If he gets vilified for making himself vulnerable, I'm going to be pissed.
Yeah. And
so I'd already worked myself up into a frenzy.
And that's the other thing is we ask for this from him and from our coaches. And then when we get it, we can't handle it. Yeah. That drives me crazy. So, yeah, sometimes I do focus on the negative because I'm trying to nip it in the bud. Like, I'm trying to just like, hey, no, we're putting that out. We're putting that spark out before it catches fire because I don't want that here. Coming up next, we're going to talk to Robin Washut, Nebraska basketball, Nebraska football. That's DB. I'm Ravi, Lulla. More Hurrdat Sports Radio coming up next. We're back here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590 ESPN Radio. ESPN Tri-Cities, that's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla. We're joined now by Robin Washut from Husker Online. Robin, how are you this morning? Hey, Robin, what's up?
Robin.
Do we have him, Shane?
Robin!
Hello.
Hi. How we doing?
quite
should I not have said?
Quite the intro there, DB.
Well, I mean, as if Robin doesn't know I'm kind of crazy anyway. Good morning, Robin. How are we doing?
Ready for everything. I'm well. How are you guys?
Good. So I finally got a chance to see you before the game on Saturday, and I think I said something like, "Gosh, they seem confident. I wish I knew what that meant," or something to that effect. When early on, but this was like before I almost said tip. I'll get to that. Before kick or whatever. What was your read on kind of the mood?
I mean, I think from outside the program, I think most people just expected to get run out of the stadium once again, just with the way that the week before went. And for me, it was more on Ohio State's end than it was Nebraska. I assumed they were going to come in looking for blood, just considering what happened to them in their last game. They were coming off a bye week and having Penn State after Nebraska. That was a game that they needed to come out and make a statement in a lot of ways. And so, while Nebraska may have been motivated and had a good week of practice, all that, you would think that a team like Ohio State, that many consider a national championship contender under those circumstances, would have been pretty dialed in and tough for anybody in the country to beat. Well, I think that narrative shifted quickly with just how that game started. And so, but going into it, I thought that, it didn't really matter as much where Nebraska's mental state was as it did what I assumed Ohio State's was going to be.
Were you surprised at how the crowd, what were your thoughts on when they got there, kind of how into it they were? The shoe, I'm not going to call it overrated because they win a ton, but the crowd was leaving, they were booing, and really didn't get loud until the last 5 minutes. It just seems like they don't treat Coach. I don't know how to say it. It didn't seem like they appreciate it very much. It was a much different environment than I thought.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're a fan base that is pretty spoiled in a lot of regards. In a game like that, they just probably thought that their team was going to come in and win handily. They'd get to go on and return to their afternoons and just have a nice little Saturday. And then when things didn't go according to script, the tension started to mount. And you've seen that over the years at Nebraska.
Oh, yeah.
When they were coming in with, relative expectations and, McNeese State or South Dakota State or whatever it is, suddenly shows that they're not just going to lay down for them. You just kind of get the murmurs going on, and all of a sudden the fan base gets a little agitated. And I think that was kind of what happened at Ohio State. And again, I think they're a fan base that if you don't go undefeated and win a national championship, you're a failure. And I think that was kind of an example of that, where they didn't really give Nebraska any respect. They thought that was going to be a blowout from the jump. And when things turned out to be more difficult than expected, I think the angst started to kind of settle into that stadium and show that it was going to be a much harder day than anticipated.
Robin, this is a kind of a weird question about Ohio State, but do you think that level of expectation is justified? I know they've won a lot, but is it fair for them to want more from Ryan Day than they're getting? They've been pretty consistently very good, but that national championship has been elusive for the last decade, I guess. Does it seem sort of out of pocket to you?
Yes, when you step back and you get out of that Ohio State bubble, it seems ridiculous that people are complaining about that level of success. What are they doing? But you saw it a few decades ago here in Nebraska, where Nebraska had the audacity to lose a game at Arizona State, and then all of a sudden, everybody needs to be fired. The quarterback needs to be run out of town.
See, that's what I'm talking. Yep, he's right.
Yeah. That's kind of where Ohio State views
that's just the cost of doing business at that level.
Yeah, and then you pair in the fact just the money being involved here. Ohio State is spending substantial dollars to field a national championship program, and so with that comes expectations. And the fans are one thing, but internally that's how they view things. When you have your athletic director that tells your coach, we expect to win them all here, that sets the bar for everybody.
Yeah.
So that's
not a lot of margin for error there, Robin.
Exactly. And then you add in the Michigan element too. If they're losing that game, and they have lost that game far more than is acceptable. So despite for a program like Nebraska doing what Ohio State is and how they would take that any day of the week, when you've sustained that and then you can't get over that next hump, like you said, it's been over a decade since they actually did win a title, and the losses to Michigan and falling short on the biggest stages, I think eventually, when you're putting in that much of an investment, you expect a championship level return, and they haven't gotten it yet.
Yeah, it's interesting. In our stream, this is a sneaky good point. Husker Dominator says every fan base can get toxic. He said, but it probably doesn't help that Nebraska had some toxic coaches as well. If there is a coach that's built to handle what comes with the fervent fan base, it appears to be Coach Rhule, does it not? I mean, he's human, but hopefully he appears to be built for this.
Yeah, and I think he's got the right balance of being able to get his team to rally together. That Bo was good at that. When adversity hit, he got his guys to rally around each other and take on that us against the world mentality. But at the same time, he also kind of let that carry over into how he handled things publicly.
It's hard to be hyper paranoid and hypersensitive. When those go together, it's like.
Yeah, and then the flip side of it, with Mike Riley, I'm sure that he did everything possible to try to make things seem great in the public spotlight, but internally, I don't know how much rallying of any sort was going on there. So I think Matt Rhule is kind of that balance where he's getting his guys to rally around each other and come together through tough adversity, but then also putting a perception publicly that things aren't as bad as they seem, and being able to respond to criticism the right way, even when it really starts to mount on you. So that's kind of that fine line you have to walk as a coach. And like you said, I don't think Nebraska's had a guy that's done it as well as Matt Rhule has thus far.
We're talking with Robin Washut from Husker Online. Robin, I want to switch over to basketball here for Nebraska. They get the exhibition out of the way. Anything you saw against Grand Valley State that you feel like you learned more about this team? Obviously, I think we're going to have a very different dynamic in a post-Casey world.
Yeah, for sure. And like, I guess we'll start with the concerns. Right now the 3-point shooting has not been nearly consistent enough. I mean, there's only been 3, I guess, known sample points with the red-white scrimmage, the close scrimmage at Utah, and then this exhibition. And really, Nebraska hasn't shot it all that well. Their best shooting performance came at Utah, and they were 38% from 3, which is okay, but it's not great. But then you pair the other 2, exhibitions, and it's been rough. Like, if it weren't for Gavin Griffiths in that exhibition, Nebraska would have been, non-existent from behind the arc. And, for a team that last year led the Big Ten and was one of the top nationally in 3-point attempts per game, what is Nebraska's shooting capability, and then also the roster dynamic going to do to their shot selections? They're going to continue to shoot at that clip. They've got to figure out a way to pick it up and do it consistently. Otherwise, you're going to have some tough offensive nights. I guess the good news, though, with that is that I think they have a bona fide Big Ten point guard now for maybe the first time since Brett's been here in Raleigh Wooster.
Yeah.
He might be the most important offseason addition Nebraska had this past cycle. One, he's tough, he's big, he doesn't get bothered by physical defense, and he's a guy that, when he's able to muscle his way into the lane, good things are going to happen. So he looked really good in that exhibition. Again, you take it for what it's worth, given the level of competition. But for a team that kind of seemed a little out of sorts early on, as happens in exhibition play, I thought Raleigh was that steadying force Nebraska desperately needs him to be, especially early on this season as they kind of continue to iron out these wrinkles.
How about for Plan B, Robin? Nebraska has legitimate Big Ten conference size too. Could you see them playing a little bit different, knowing they may have a few more offensive options than having to knock down the 3 ball? Or is this one of those things where you're pitting kind of the direction of the sport versus kind of how Nebraska is currently built?
Yeah, and it's going to be dependent based. Like with Braxton Mia, like, I don't know what he's going to do to change their offense much. Outside of scoring out the rim, there's not a lot there really. And then they tried a bigger lineup, both against Utah and in the exhibition with Berke at the 4 and Braxton at the 5. And I don't know. I mean, I didn't get to see the Utah game obviously, but the exhibition, it didn't look great. Like, there just didn't seem to be much chemistry there between those 2.
Was it the spacing for you?
Yeah, I think that's part of it too. And again, it's no coincidence when Gavin started hitting a couple corner threes and they became more of a perimeter threat, things opened up significantly in the paint. So it's going to be kind of a dependent scenario there. But they do have more bodies. They have as much post depth as Fred has had since he's been here. They need Berke to be good. You see flashes of what he can potentially be in this offense. He's got to play up to that more often than not for this thing really to take off.
That's Robin Washut from Husker Online. Robin, we appreciate it. We'll talk to you again soon.
Thanks, buddy.
Sounds good, guys. See you later.
We'll be back. More Hurrdat Sports Radio coming up next. Kicking off hour number 3 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities, KFOR in Lincoln. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla here at Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill. Do we have Schaefer yet? Still waiting on him?
Not yet.
You can join us here at Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill on Friday for our live breakfast. There's going to be food. You can get drinks, and you're going to have a chance to win 4 tickets and a pass to the parking pass, to the UCLA game, courtesy of our friends at Tickets for Less. Go to eventbrite.com to reserve your seats. Just search for Hurrdat Sports Radio. You're going to hang out with me and DB on a Friday.
Friday.
And we have Mike as well.
On Friday.
Hanging out with us now in the stream is our guy, Mike J. Schaefer from Husker 24/7. Schaefer, what's going on, man?
I'm just listening to Damon Benning do his best Rebecca Black.
I don't even know who that is. Is that who sings
That's who sings that song. Yeah.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. Schaefer, so now I can Google it. Does it sound anything like when I sing it, or is it better?
You know,
I wouldn't say it's better.
probably it probably is in the ballpark. I mean, I don't think you're you're not that far away from it. I have a friend who like is obsessed with that song and will just randomly send us a music video on Fridays. Like I'm fairly certain he listens to it on his drive to work. And this is a grown ass man, if you will.
So he's not like ironically listening to it.
No. There's nothing ironic about it.
Of all the Schaeferisms, that may be my favorite.
Grown ass man.
Yes. You've developed quite the library is pretty complete, but that one may be at the top shelf.
You know, I'm always going to be chasing Yogi. So what are you doing? You gotta try.
Yeah, that's a grown ass man right there.
You know what they say, Shave, 90% of the game's half mental.
Exactly. And that's probably the 90% I'm best at.
It's probably the half I'm best at.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask the question for fear that you may go off on Dodger fan here, but you kind of saw this coming, that this is who the Yanks are capable of being after the series with the Guardians?
Yeah, I mean, I think on one of my various podcasts, when I was feeling sorry for myself, I said that the Dodgers were going to sweep because the Yankees weren't good. And that's not really fair. I mean, they're a fine baseball team. They're very flawed. The American League is very flawed. It was sort of funny listening to everyone trash the AL Central because the Yankees won 2 series. I mean, that's just what the American League was. I don't expect them to win Game 4. They're a team that has to hit home runs in certain moments to survive. They have a pretty light offense outside of the home runs. They're just kind of what they are. They don't have that great of pitching either. I mean, they're a fine team. It's hard though because the Dodgers basically trot out the version of an all-star team for their lineup. Like there's not a lot of easy outs there. The one way that you could get them is their pitching isn't that good, but it's been good enough in October. And so the only team that's really given them any problems was the Padres. And as Alden Gonzalez noted, the Dodgers overcame so much to get by the Padres. They didn't have Freddie Freeman for a whole game. They had to start Tommy Edman, a guy who had never – never mind. He started multiple years for the Cardinals. They had to start Tommy Edman over Miguel Rojas. They had to pitch bullpen pitchers in key spots in October. Without Alden Gonzalez, I don't know if the Dodgers would be here right now, but his single-handed cheerleading from the press box, I suspect, of Dodger Stadium is what really pulled this whole thing together.
Schaefer, you love an underdog just coming back. And
we love an underdog. There's nothing more of an underdog than the Dodgers.
This is what we're on this morning.
I mean, listen, I'm rooting for the Dodgers. I can still say it's kind of funny. I mean, come on.
Man.
Oh, yeah. I mean, look, I want the Dodgers to win too, but I'm not going to. Come on. It doesn't mean I'm not going to mock it relentlessly.
It's not quite as bad as like the plucky underdog New York Mets, but like it's in the neighborhood.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Safe. So going into this one, I want to start with Ohio State, but we'll try not to stay here very long because UCLA is interesting, especially with what's going on at the running back spot, and they may throw it around the yard. But kind of going into this one, Ravi and I, for once, were on the same team. That I felt like there was too much made of Nebraska being the team that would be licking their wounds, and it would be Ohio State that was pissed, even though Nebraska just got their teeth kicked in and had every right to be upset too. Were you surprised as that game unfolded that the emotion seemed to play out the way they did, or was it more the execution seemed to play the way that it did, or the emotions that led to the execution seemed to play out the way it did between the two teams?
It's tough because if that game, like so much of that game and how you feel about how Nebraska played against Ohio State is directly related to how you felt watching them get smashed by Indiana. Like it's impossible to separate those two. Because if I didn't have the Indiana result, the Nebraska-Ohio State game was kind of what I thought it could be. Because I thought that was Nebraska's defense. Like if you remember going into the Indiana game, I was excited about Nebraska's opportunity in front of it because I thought the defensive line could do what they did against Ohio State to Indiana, and they didn't. And then, everything snowballed, and I made a Shane Falco reference last week. I won't have to do that again. We'll see what movies I can work in this time. But no, I mean, I think in part because what we do now has just become wild week-to-week referendums about the season, the coaching staff, the head coach, the players involved. Look, we don't really have a ton of perspective because we're just reacting to what it was that we saw the week before. And if the week before looked bad, then the next week looks good, then it's somewhat either hard for us to compute it, or we just throw out the good because we think that they're bad because they had the bad week. So that's again a really word salady answer to say that this team has put together 6, I think, good performances, good to great performances, one okay to maybe below average in Illinois, and then one atrocious against Indiana. Like that's the math, but we're going to focus way, way more on those 2 losses because that's what we do. We're going to focus a lot more on that. And it makes you forget, like, these other teams have to go and play Nebraska. Like, that's always the part of the equation that we don't talk about sometimes. We talk about Nebraska can't do this, Nebraska can't do that. Well, you know what Ohio State couldn't do? They couldn't block at all. They couldn't open up their running game. They really didn't have much in the passing game outside of 2, well-timed busts, and Will Howard hit wide open guys. I guess 3 if you count the one on the final drive that led to their last touchdown.
Same concept too.
Yeah, I mean, it's so they took advantage of several moments, some good fortune. Nebraska just didn't quite have the ability to kind of pull it off. But I don't know that we should be as shocked as we are or were in the moment, because that version of Nebraska has existed this year. It's just not the one we had seen most recently.
Safety. So after listening to Coach Rhule, you were talking about kind of being in the moment, and everybody, like, real time was very critical of Nebraska's quick/screen game real time in Columbus. Did any of the explanations that you heard thus far kind of temper that, or are you still kind of, man, too much of this, not dink and dunk, but you know what I mean? Like, if you go back to just your social media account during the game, like, does it help? Does it reconcile it in your head, or is it like, yeah, bud, or like, how are you receiving?
I don't particularly love that answer from him, but obviously he's going to have more data than I will. But we've seen Nebraska has really reined it in terms of throwing downfield. Like, we've seen, I ran the numbers on it, of their 63 completions, 23 of them went for 4 yards or less in the month of October. Like, this wasn't like something they just started doing against Ohio State. The fact was they were doing it and losing yards. I mean, you have like 16% of your passes going for no yards, or 16% of your completions going for no yards, like 14% of your completions going for lost yards in the month of October. That's not good. Like, I don't care that Ohio State has a pass rush, but it's not effectively helping you as a football team. So calling it because it's what you think the antidote is doesn't, it might be the correct decision, but you haven't proven that you can run it. So running something that doesn't work, even if it's supposed to work, it does nothing for anybody. So I guess to me, it only highlights the fact that they don't have more answers to the tests or other alternatives than to continue to try to throw passes to players who weren't as athletic as Cody Simon. I mean, that's part of what kills me on those last 2 screens, is you're trying to throw to a running back. I mean, Cody Simon's a better athlete than Emmett Johnson. And I don't mean that to be offensive to Emmett Johnson. I mean that as in Cody Simon is a really, really good player. And so if he's in coverage and nobody is obscuring him from getting to Emmett Johnson, at best, how many yards is Emmett Johnson going to get with a 2-yard head start on Cody Simon, who's bearing down on you anyways? Like, it felt like they played right into a matchup Ohio State wanted, which is another reason why it doesn't.
I would normally, Schaefer, I would take, as an OC, I would take man-to-man versus screenplay almost all day long, because if Simon doesn't make that play, I mean.
But he just did it the play before, and then you did it again to the opposite side. Like, it's like you doubled down on what you just saw, and it didn't work. And we watched him do that multiple times with the same wide receiver screen pass. And you asked Jamal Banks to block Burke, and he couldn't do it early in the game. He couldn't do it right after that, and you did it 3 times. Like, it's self-sabotage at some point. That's what I tweeted. And we can talk about, like, yes, this is what you want to do against that pass rush. This is what you want to do against man. It's what you want to do, but the question is, can you do it? Other than the 110 yards that Ja'Cory Barney got, did they have a successful screenplay in the other 8 that were called? I don't think so.
So, Schaefer, let's take the next step there, right? Let's say, okay, Ohio State's got this great pass rush, so theoretically you want to be able to connect on the short wide receiver passing game to the perimeter, right? But Nebraska's having a hard time executing that. So then, like, what is the alternative? If the right answer to the test isn't getting you what you want, what's the alternative there?
I mean, if you want the hindsight answer, you wonder if there isn't a middle breaking route that you can throw, that if Cody Simon is on your running back, you're at least giving an option that you're using him as a decoy. I mean, if you have someone going over the middle there in man coverage and they're able to get a bead, there's nobody in the middle of the field on that 3rd and whatever, where he's going to chase down the Emmett Johnson or second down. So that's just like a hindsight answer. It's easy to see after the play happens. Everything would have to go the exact same way. Who knows if it would? I think that they need more middle breaking options. I think it was important for Thomas Fidone to have back-to-back good games. I think he's someone that can help this team in the middle of the field, and potentially in those situations, if you're not able to win on the outside against either quarters or man coverage, that maybe you can win in the middle with Fidone, who has good hands. You probably, are comfortable throwing even if the spacing isn't great, because he's physical enough. He can make a play on the ball. Some of that comes down to, is Dylan comfortable doing it? I mean, the other part of this whole conversation is, are they running some of these higher percentage throws, lower depth targets because your quarterback between the ears is struggling right now, or physically he's struggling right now? We don't have the answers to that, and I don't expect them to just come out and say that either. But I wonder if some of the change in the offense is that they're seeing at practice that he's not driving the ball down the field, that he's checking down. So they're trying to work with what they can with him. I don't know if that's the case. I'm just throwing that out there.
Hey, so Schaefer, if we kind of fast forward to UCLA, I think that running back situation health-wise is not strong. UCLA could potentially want to throw it around the yard. Do you like kind of the matchup based on what you've heard Coach Rhule say about what they want to do with the secondary, how it's played, how the defense is kind of ramping up? Do you like the potential matchup at least as much as you can on a Tuesday?
For Nebraska's defense against UCLA's offense, I love that it's largely one-dimensional. I mean, I think that Nebraska, when they've been most successful this year, have done the best when they take a team's running game away and say, okay, try to throw it all over the yard now, and we don't have to worry about the running back. I mean, teams haven't had success doing that. The teams that have been the most balanced, Indiana and Illinois, have made the defense look the worst. Nobody else has really been balanced. Rutgers was really run heavy for a quarter, and then Nebraska took away the cutback lanes, and then that was all she wrote for their running game. And so then they had to throw for most of the day, and that didn't go very well for them. I mean, Purdue wasn't balanced in any meaningful way because Nebraska took the running back game out of it. Ohio State couldn't really run the ball. Their most successful run was probably the Will Howard sneak, other than one cutback that they had from Judkins when Hartzog overran it. So when Nebraska plays kind of more one-dimensional offenses, and particularly ones that are pass reliant, they've looked pretty good defensively this year. I think playing at home, I think the crowd is going to be really good on Saturday.
I do too. Like I think that's kind of the sneaky X factor.
Yeah.
I think the crowd is.
I think it's going to be a good environment Saturday.
Is ready
really
to be all in.
Yep. Well, and people, people want to root for this team. I think we get in the mindset that people look for reasons to be unhappy with Nebraska, but I think it's more they want reasons to feel good about Nebraska. And going toe-to-toe with Ohio State, and yes, they didn't win, and yes, they've been close before, but that at least as a fan, who has a ticket, that gives you a reason to show up on Saturday with some excitement and not think that it's going to be November 2023. Because what happened last year has no effect for what's going to happen this year. And Nebraska has the ability on Saturday to end all of those conversations against a team that it can beat if it goes and it plays well. And it's on the coaching staff and the players to make sure that happens.
Schaefer, this is a weird question, but just hearing you give that last answer sort of got the wheels turning a little bit. Do you think the tenor of the fan base would be different if you flopped the Indiana and Ohio State scores?
Like if Nebraska lost close to Indiana, but then got blown out by Ohio State?
Yeah.
No, because then I think you'd still have to go through the week of you're not anywhere close to where you want to be. Indiana's winning when you're not winning. It shouldn't take this long to see progress. Where's the development that we've been told about? They say one thing and do another. I mean, these are all the answers that you're seeing on the message board, on Twitter, everywhere.
You rattled that off just way too easy.
Hey, man, I celebrated my 13th anniversary of working for a company that, has a message board that I help run and moderate. So I am well-versed in what it sounds like and looks like when Nebraska loses and when a coach hasn't, inspired the fan base by what are we game 20? Yeah, 20 games into the Matt Rhule era. Congrats. They're 10-10, I think, if my math is right.
Congrats on the anniversary.
Yeah, thank you. 13 years of people putting up with this.
So relative. Oh,
Schaefer,
shoot.
So you kind of brought up the one-dimensionality of UCLA and how you like Nebraska when they face those types of teams. Am I crazy to think that that's why I think that's why they're going to beat USC too? I think they sweep the California teams kind of because of that exact same thing you're talking about. I look at Colorado as not that much different, or I look at USC as not that much different than Colorado.
I think USC wants to run it more with Woody Marks than Colorado generally does.
Marks is pretty good.
I don't think USC has the athletes at wide receiver that Colorado does. And for whatever we want to say about Shedeur Sanders, I still think he's the best quarterback in college
Better than
football.
Miller Moss, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And so, if I have to pick between watching Miller Moss throw it down the sidelines and Shedeur Sanders, if I'm a Nebraska defender, I feel a lot better if it's Miller Moss. So, and then there's no Travis Hunter, there's no Jimmy. So it's just I think that the danger of USC is that it's on the road. I just don't know that we've seen Nebraska play under Matt Rhule. We still haven't seen him play a great road game. The closest is probably Ohio State, where you only had the one turnover and it came on a 3rd and 19 where you had to push the ball down the field, and you just didn't see the guy.
So you think that SC collectively as a whole has not as good a wide receivers as Colorado?
I don't think they're as good, but I mean, some of that is just a Travis Hunter effect. Guys, this is how far I am on the Travis Hunter effect. It would be stunning to me if anyone voted for anyone other than Travis Hunter to win the Heisman right now. That's where I'm at. And there are some great performances out there, but that guy is the single best player in college football. He's playing two ways. He's already having a better season to this point than he had all of last year. He's doing it at a high level on both sides of the ball. Nobody else is doing that.
He's probably got to get to like 9 wins though, right?
I mean, are we sure Colorado can't rip off wins in November?
I'm not saying they can't. I'm not saying they can't.
No, they probably have to. RG3 won it at 8-4. That's kind of the barometer. You got to get to at least 8. I think 9. If they're 10-2 and Travis Hunter has 1,000 yards receiving, there's no way that guy isn't walking off with the Heisman.
Interesting.
Hey, so
that's a very weird answer about USC's wide receiver.
I brought Colorado, so that's my fault. That's okay.
Schaefer, let me ask you something. When you look at the point spread in Vegas, considering what's happening, I clearly was bet down from the open, which is fine. It is what it is, with public money. Does the line seem right to you when you're talking about how you think the game is going to go?
Where are we at? Is it 8.5, 7.5?
I've got it at 6.5.
6.5.
Okay, yeah. I mean, I was kind of more fine with it at the 9.5.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think this is a good UCLA team. Nebraska has covered 6 of the 8 games this year. They, the 2 games that they got blown out by Indiana and they lost to Illinois. Otherwise, they've covered everything else. I think Nebraska has the ability to keep points low for UCLA. And if you make Ethan Garbers, who has multiple interceptions, throw interceptions, you have an opportunity to set up short field position. And if what we saw on Saturday with your kicking game is a real thing, Nebraska has not had an issue getting the ball on the other side of the field. They have had an issue finishing with points. We talk about their offense as if, the scoring and if last year and this year are the same, and I don't really think that's true because I feel like where Nebraska is failing this year is they're not finishing drives inside the 40. Last year, it felt like they couldn't get drives going, in the month of November. So and certainly couldn't hold on to the ball. So I think if you have confidence that John Hull is the guy that he was in Columbus, I think that's a bigger boost than we probably are giving this team credit for. Because if you're talking about maybe adding an additional 3, in some cases, maybe even 6 points a game, if you're actually able to make these field goals, like that is a huge boost to a team where if your offense can get you, again, we talk about it. If your offense can get you 24 points, you're going to win most of your Big Ten games. And I think if they can get 24 points in the month of November, they're going to win 3 of those 4 games.
Schaefer, last thing here from me. Could I make the argument to you that UCLA, despite their record, is better than they seem? I mean, you look at their losses. It's Indiana, at LSU, Oregon, and Penn State. Those are 4 top 10 teams when we're looking at today. Like, can I make the argument that they're not as bad as the record?
You can definitely make that argument. I mean, they're not – it's not like they're bereft of talent or anything like that. I just don't know that they have when I've watched them play, everything looks hard for them. I mean, it's not all that different than it is for Nebraska sometimes too. But I think because of that, and you rattled off those teams, a lot of those teams have good defenses. I think Nebraska has a good defense. I think that's a really tough thing for UCLA to overcome with the sort of offense that it has.
That's Mike Schaefer from Husker 24/7. Schaefer, we appreciate the time as always. We'll talk to you next week.
Thanks, Schaefer.
All right, guys. Appreciate it. Have a good one.
That's our guy, Mike J. Schaefer from Husker 24/7. And I got to tell you about our guys over at Game Day Men's Health as well. Low testosterone doesn't just affect your body, it can impact your mind as well. Game Day Men's Health combines testosterone replacement therapies with strategies to improve your mental health. Depression, anxiety, and brain fog are often linked to low T, and Game Day's got the expertise to help clear your mind and boost your mood. When you get to visit the clinic, it's not just a voice on the phone. You're a valued patient getting comprehensive care that telehealth just can't match. Go to GameDayMen'sHealth.com to set up your appointment. Welcome back to Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities, KFOR in Lincoln. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla here at Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill. It's time for Bet On It, brought to you by Warhorse Sportsbook, the best place in Nebraska to place your sports bets. Go to warhorsecasino.com to see all their promotions that they've got going on. There's always something fun going on at Warhorse Casino, both in Lincoln and in Omaha. Make sure you go check it out. DB.
Check it out.
You got a game 4 tonight.
Yes, I do.
Are you betting on a sweep?
No.
No? You think it gets game 5? They lose the bullpen game?
I don't have a strong feeling in either way. I will say, I wouldn't be dismissive of a bullpen game because if the Dodgers are dialed in, they should win because the Yankees situationally are so poor 1 through 9.
Yeah.
The Dodgers can match that.
Mm-hmm.
They can situationally, and it's hard.
Because you can work around a couple guys.
Yeah, for sure.
In a lineup. You can work around a couple guys.
So, I mean.
You can't work around the Dodgers lineup.
I don't understand how tonight's line is the exact same as last night's line.
Yeah.
So.
Minus 150 for the Yankees.
Let's start there.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I wouldn't.
I have a hard time getting a feel on this one just because, when you're down 0-3.
Yeah.
There's basically one of two ways you can go. Hey, this thing's
tank or fight?
Yeah, it's hey, this thing is over, or God, I don't want to get swept.
Yeah.
Right? Because at some point, deep down, this thing's a wrap.
I don't know if you do or not.
I think you do.
You win tonight and Cole goes tomorrow.
I understand that, but you understand the history. It's happened one time ever.
Yeah.
So you understand context.
Yeah,
here.
But they don't. No, I don't think the Yankees care about that.
You understand the situation you're in, though, being down 0-3.
They don't care that it hasn't been done. It's only been done once. They don't.
I think contextually you understand where you're at.
I don't. I don't think you get to this stage in the World Series and think, well, it's only been done once. I don't think they think like that one bit.
You don't think last night they're thinking we have to win this game so we don't go down 0-3?
You're saying two different things.
Okay.
You never want to be down 0-3. But you're not discouraged because it's only been done once before. You don't think to yourself, there's a clear difference in that. You always want to be in an advantageous spot to be able to run down games in a series. So, sure, you don't want to be down 0-3.
Sure, yeah.
Okay? 2-1 is significantly better than 0-3. But I don't think they're thinking to themselves, going into the night, man, there's only been 0-4 Boston. No, that's a loser. Nobody's thinking like that. Not that's in. And if they are, them guys probably shouldn't be playing. It's always about staying right there.
Here's the reason I bring it up is I don't think everyone.
And plus, who was it done to?
Them. They know.
Yeah.
I understand that.
Okay.
I mean, none of them were around.
I'm just saying, like.
It happened to their uniform. I get that.
Yeah.
But part of the reason I bring that up is I think sometimes we assume a mentality in elite athletes that, like, sometimes they're really good at what they do. I don't always know that their mental edge is what we give them credit for.
No, that's true. Like we see it all the time.
And
but I'm also not going to assume. I'm also not going to assume the worst either.
I'm not assuming.
But I do agree. There's some variance depending on who you are. But I think in that clubhouse at this juncture, especially knowing Boone, or like I just think he thinks, hey, one at a time. We get to Cole tomorrow.
Sure.
That gives us a chance to go back to LA 3-2. So
I just think
I think the last thing they think about is that only the Red Sox have done it.
Maybe not in that specific of a context. I do think human nature has to come into the conversation for some of those guys at some point.
Yeah,
where they just know this isn't a thing that gets done.
Competition among guys at that level isn't what I would call normal, though.
I get that.
It borders on irrational.
That's why I brought up the mental edge doesn't exist for all of those guys. Like, I think on a baseball team, because you have so many dudes,
yeah,
and because it is kind of there's a lot of individualism in baseball, the way the game is played.
Yeah, I just don't know. I don't
I think you need a lot of guys to have that mental edge to overcome that.
Even at this level, I think, let's say I'm talking about high school or college.
Mm-hmm.
If somebody says, well, it's been done once, that's all I need to hear.
Sure. That's all you need to hear.
I think that's how a lot of competitive people think.
I think that's how a lot of competitive people think. I think there's a lot of people that play professional sports that are less competitive than we think.
Nah, maybe.
Did we see some of the players, at least one of the players last night for the Yankees, kind of lose his edge there, in the batter box? Jazz.
Oh, yeah. Chisholm, so he's a hard comp because he's very unorthodox.
His game is weird.
He's very well, even when he takes the podium, you just never know what he's going to say.
Yeah.
Like, he's very unorthodox. So I don't know if I would use Jazz, but, I mean, Verdugo's still taking good cuts, right? Down 4-0 in the ninth?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's.
But down 0-2 and trying to win game 3 is different than being down 0-3.
I think taking good cuts down 4-0 when you had 4 hits all night is kind of what baseball is. It's about managing failure. So I think.
I know, but some guys are better at that than others.
Yeah, but, I mean, why die on that hill, though? That is such a particular finite thing to rest in.
Because I think human nature crawls into play here.
Yeah, generally speaking. So generally speaking, competitors at that level, they play.
Can I ask one question about that?
Sure.
On the other side, will we see the Dodgers just throw everything at it?
So I don't want to speak for that, but no. The bottom line for both of you, I think teams will fall back into their preparation. They don't overthink anything more than in the moment. The closer you can stay to that median, the more success you have as a team. So the Dodgers will try to do what they do. The Yankees will try to do what they do. They know they're going to watch all those preview or those. They're going to get on their laptop. They're going to look at those swings in the cage, in the cages. They're not a competitive swing, competitive at bat, not a competitive at bat. Is there anything? I think their approach will be the same. Now, sure, are there varying degrees of folks' mental approach? Yeah, but competitors are going to compete.
So let me ask you this, moving away from this series, but kind of staying on the same topic here. A lot of people saw Anthony Richard tap out this weekend. And
that drew some I was shocked.
And kind of had a same feeling about a guy not being very competitive. Like, how did you
because
I
don't
we just don't see it very often.
I don't think him coming out because he was tired has anything to do with his competitiveness. I think we make it that because it was macho. I don't think based on what he was asked to do, he felt like he was capable of doing it. That's
Sure.
what I think happened. I think at that point he felt like he was going to be a detriment to his team.
Sure.
There's some other guys that need to tap out sometimes too.
A little self-awareness.
Yeah, like
I think
I listen to Chase McDaniels rant, and I'm like, okay, man.
I think we just, because we don't see that from that position, because we see other guys do it. We see running backs all the time. Like, hey, I need one. It doesn't matter. Like, it matters that he's a mobile quarterback, right? Like, that's a thing. Like, Tom Brady's not getting winded on a play, most likely.
You know how many times I see wide receivers come out in and out of the lineup after running a couple of routes?
Yeah, because they need one, right?
Okay.
You run like a couple deep routes, you're like, hey, give me one.
We just think, quarterback, you can't. It didn't move my needle.
Because he's asked to do something different.
Yeah, it didn't. It
didn't bother you?
Nah. Dude puts his body on the line all the time.
100%, yeah.
I'm cool.
Yeah.
I'm cool.
It's just, we've seen other mobile.
It was very strange. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah, it was a really unusual moment.
Like, it was very strange.
Is that a situation where you're just like, maybe you check out of a play, you check into a run play or something, or
quarterbacks do it all the time.
Right, that's what I mean. Like, hey, I'm tired. Can I
yeah,
check into something else?
They do that.
Or they say like, hey, I don't like the look. I'm getting a timeout.
Yeah, it's just the fact we heard Anthony
Well, we saw him do it.
Yeah, he actually acted on it.
Which is like, I don't know.
You've
got other options though, right?
Yeah, we love to pounce. Where I'm like, I don't know, man. Like, I don't think he's any less competitive on Tuesday morning than I did on Sunday afternoon.
No, it was weird though.
100%.
Not as weird as the Dwayne Wade statue, but pretty weird. How come we can't make a good statue? Like, what's the problem here?
What did T-Mac call it?
I'm not going to say anything about
the I Am Legend.
Yes. That's pretty funny. He does kind of look like one of the zombies in I Am Legend. That's a good pull.
Quietly, that movie was sensational.
It was a good pull.
Outside of the dog dying.
Yeah, I didn't like that scene. But and
it was a German shepherd.
How come we can't make good statues?
I don't know.
Like, I look at Michelangelo's David, and I was like, hey, that looks like a person. That happened a couple thousand years ago, or however long.
We have one of the best statue makers here, right in our very own city.
And then I go, how come they can't make Dwayne Wade look like Dwayne Wade?
My man said, "I Am Legend."
I mean, it's not quite as bad as the Cristiano Ronaldo statue, but it's pretty bad.
Well, it's hard to make statues that pretty.
I'm just saying, they were doing it with a chisel a couple thousand years ago. We can't figure it out now?
I am pretty.
We can't figure it out now?
Yeah, for sure.
That's Bet On It, brought to you by Warhorse Sportsbook. That's DBM Ravi Lulla. We'll be back to wrap up the show. Coming up next. Wrapping up the show here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities, KFOR, and Lincoln. DB's laughing again. Is it the Lucille Ball statue?
What is Amazing Daniel doing?
I don't know, man.
I do like AK's his tweet though. He says, Aaron said, the statue is bad, but the way we go about making statues is relatively the same as it was several hundred years ago. Also, most statues aren't chiseled. They make a mold. Incredibly arduous process. I'd argue the expected turnaround time causes some of this. So
I'm not as familiar with the statue making process, obviously, as Aaron is.
AK is weird. He knows a lot about a lot of random things.
I'm also saying, like, okay, just because they do it the same way, like we've got.
Remember, and it's his business. So, but remember, he's the guy that knows about like the the beverages and stuff and the trends and the sales.
Yeah. I'm just saying we got lasers. We got 3D printing. You're telling me they can't figure out a better way to make a statue actually look like a person? Because Amazing Daniel sent us a picture of a Lucille Ball statue.
Is that who that is?
That's what it says in the tweet. I never would have got that in a million years. That doesn't even look like a person.
It certainly doesn't.
That doesn't look like I Love Lucy. I know that. Also, why she got a bottle? Like she's drunk, like a drunk statue.
I think she's giving you some castor oil. I'm going to say this and move on.
That's the Vegemine episode.
I'm sorry, say that again?
I don't know how to say it. The Vita Vegemine episode.
Lord have mercy.
One more time, Shane.
Come on, man. Stop playing.
The Vita Vegemine episode. I got to say it real quick.
Shane,
you just kind of got to
The Vita Vegemine?
Yeah, episode. So you just got to kind of glance over it.
Shane, one more time.
Outside of the perceived curves, it doesn't even look feminine.
No, it doesn't. If you showed me this.
Do you know who I thought that was?
Who?
Like, I thought it was a caricature of like Jerry Lee Lewis.
Yeah, I could see that. It kind of looks like I think it was the teacher from like Breakfast Club.
Whose bust was that in Canton that everybody flipped out over?
Oh gosh, I can't remember.
It did.
But that's a good example. Like a lot of the busts for the Hall of Fame are pretty solid. Like some of them are bad, but most of them are at least, there's a passing resemblance to that person.
Oh, it was a thing. So he said they had to make a new one. They didn't even try on the first one.
No, the second one actually does look like her at least. Like there's a passing resemblance. The first one doesn't even look like a person. Like it does not look like a human being.
Yeah.
I'm going to retweet this so people can know what we're talking about here.
I really want to read Terrence's text, but I can't. But
I mean, you can. You can say what does Shane tell you? You can say anything once. I mean,
Benjamin.
Apparently Shane can't say everything once, but
I can.
I mean, listen. I mean, if anybody can say it, you can.
I know, but
I certainly can't.
So the funny thing is when I asked him, because you thought it was so funny that he texted. I have a friend.
That particular word is very amusing.
Who was comparing statues.
Yeah.
He was comparing Dwayne Wade's statue to the little itty bitty one that they gave Allen Iverson.
The AI one was pretty bad.
And he used a couple of terms, and I said, you thought it was funny, and I go, hey.
One of them is objectively funny.
I would like to turn Ravi loose to be able to say this on air. And he responded, I like Ravi. I don't want him jammed up over this.
Which I say some wild stuff, but I'm a little scared of that one.
Yeah.
I don't want to.
Oh, how are the older guys going to take it?
I don't want to get jammed up either. T-Mac. I don't want to get jammed up either.
Oh, now who? Okay, so is he making these up?
What?
He just hit me with Ronaldo's. Oh no, that one.
No, that's the one I said. Cristiano Ronaldo's is brutal. They had to fix that one too.
Who's doing these?
It feels like this is what happens when you lie on your resume, and you end up with a job that you can't do. It's like you ever see the movie War Dogs?
No.
So it's Jonah Hill and Miles Teller.
I kind of like Jonah Hill.
I do too. He's a good actor.
He's okay.
He's versatile. But they basically, they're these young kids that get into government contracting and have no idea what they're doing, and they end up signing this enormous deal that they cannot fulfill. And so they're trying to, basically they have to become illegal arms traders to try and fulfill this military order because they are not qualified for the thing that they got signed up for. I feel like that's what's happening with these statue artists.
Some of these are
they're like, oh, guys, I can do this. Look at this great drawing that I made of this statue that I'm going to do. It's like, oh, by the way, I've never made a statue before. That's what it looks like is happening.
I might have to go down this rabbit hole. He's on to something. We need a Bud statue. Oh, it's coming.
Oh man,
it's coming.
The Cristiano Ronaldo one is so bad.
So it looks like the real picture is one that people photoshopped.
Yeah, no, they photoshopped it to make it try and look like that's what he'd have to look like in real life for it to be a passing resemblance to the statue.
I guess I should pay more attention to statues. It's kind of funny,
dude. It's hilarious. I
felt distracted.
The Michael Jordan one looks like Michael Jordan. What are we doing here? The one outside of the United Center. I don't know if it's called the United Center anymore, but whatever it's called now.
The Brook Teal one was lock solid.
I'll say the Brook Teal. We've got one down the road here that looks like real people.
Briscoe's is solid.
It's not that hard, guys.
Yeah, but he's the guy that's doing. We got some good folks here. Locally.
So hire our dude. Instead of having Dwayne Wade look like a zombie.
War Dogs is another good movie you probably won't watch because you're stubborn. Kind of like Inglourious Bastards.
Oh, man, Inglourious Bastards is a great
might be
movie.
a lot of things. Stubborn isn't one of them.
Inglourious Bastards is a great movie. War Dogs is good, too. You'd probably like it.
I'd like to say Principled.
Principled? That's what a lot of stuff
even
people
my
say.
Coaching staff and my teammates and kids that I coach, when I don't care, I really, 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 really don't care. But when I do, I really, 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 really care. So it's only it's only like a handful.
I get that. I'm very particular about the things I care about. But if I care, I'm all the way in.
Yeah.
And if I don't, I just
90% of what people do, it's like
doesn't bother me. Whatever.
It's fine.
But the things that
except you thinking that people will think that
Vita Vita Benjamin.
03 has only been done once, so therefore they shouldn't show.
Well,
up
it
at the
didn't happen.
ballpark
It didn't
is
happen
making-
in 03.
is
They
ma-
lost
04
in 03.
Is making me upset.
That's fine. I think you assume a competitive nature to every professional athlete.
No,
that
I'm
doesn't
the same
exist.
guy that said Nebraska was going to come to play hard, and we act like, Ohio State was the only one that was pissed. No, I understand emotion.
We both said that.
Right?
We both said that.
Yeah, I give you some love on that one.
I think there is.
I think I talked you into it.
No.
It's funny how you get mad when I say that. You're not going to let me get away with that, are you?
Not even a little bit. So I will say this. It might.
You see how this dude looked at me?
It might be a basketball guy thing.
No.
I think there are some basketball players that love to.
Because you've heard 1, 2, 3 Cancun.
No, not just that. Not just that. But, like, even from coaching. Like, there's a ton of dudes that love to hoop that aren't that competitive. Like, they'll put the work
There's
in.
a lot of people that are good at sports that aren't competitive. I understand that.
That's what I mean. That's all I'm saying.
I understand that.
Is I think there's some people that play at a really high level that we assume had to be hyper competitive to play at that level, and I don't think that's true.
Well,
you have to have a hyper good work ethic, especially if you're not competitive.
But that's kind of like saying, like, well, if he's just not very tough. Like, you get to a certain point where you're just tough. You get to a certain point where you are competitive. Now, there are varying degrees. Everybody that plays football is tough.
Yeah, we're not talking about football. We're talking about baseball.
But I'm just to make it to that level, you have to be somewhat competitive.
Yeah, but does somewhat keep the intrusive thoughts out? That's the question. At what point does your competitiveness outweigh the intrusive thoughts of, 3, this thing's a wrap?
I think you're crazy.
I don't think I am. I think there's a lot.
I think the last thing that clubhouse is thinking is about 04 Red Sox.
I don't think they're thinking about the 04 Red Sox.
Now, if you
I
tell
think
me
they're thinking about being down 03.
03's tough.
Yeah, it is.
03's tough.
And there's going to be some intrusive thoughts of like, yeah, this probably isn't going to get done. We probably missed an opportunity here. We probably missed an opportunity in game 1. We probably missed an opportunity in game 2 when they went up early, right? Like,
didn't the Dodgers beat the A's 4-1?
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah.
I'm just saying. I think it's more common than we think that not every professional athlete's hyper competitive. I think that's why the stories of the psychopath hyper competitive guys stick out so much.
Yeah. You're going with
like, you think Melo's hyper competitive?
Carmelo?
Yeah, Anthony.
I do.
I don't think he's on the same scale as some of the guys that we talk about, though.
Well, he might not be Jimmy Butler, but
neither is Jamari Butler, but that's okay.
Jimmy
Butler.
I met Jimmy. Jimmy Butler ran some of his teammates off.
I know. I was making fun of.
He forced his way out of Minnesota because he didn't feel like Karl Anthony Towns was competitive.
I'm just making fun of Gus
Is
Johnson.
it going to work in New York?
No,
it might.
He's played for Tibbs before. It's not going to work in New York.
Well, Tibbs isn't making the move if he doesn't think it can work.
You think Tibbs made that move?
Yes, I don't think the Knicks are doing anything without Tibbs' blessing.
I think they're willing to fire Tibbs if it doesn't work.
You're getting ready to get him out of that contract, though. There's no reward. He ain't gonna make $243 for the rest.
I understand that.
I think it's only like another year.
I don't know that Tibbs. Maybe Tibbs thinks it could work, and it's just not going to. I don't know.
Well, is that being principled or stubborn? TK.
I would say that Tibbs is stubborn. I'd go ahead and put that on. I know we're not in bet on it.
I don't have any idea what you're laughing at, but feel free to knock it off.
He's still laughing at Vita Vita Vegemin.
I still don't know what he was trying to say. Like, what is it supposed to be?
I was probably saying
like Vita Vea? Are you a Buccaneers fan?
He's a big defensive tackle guy.
Is it Vita Vea?
No, it's
Vita Blue.
Good pitcher.
Good pull.
No, it's Vita Vegemin.
Good pull.
It's a reference to a I Love Lucy episode.
I can't believe the amazing dude put that picture of Ronaldo up. Like, what is he doing?
I can't believe that people that do this for a living are that bad at making statues. Like, if we were as equally bad at our job as these people are at making statues, we would not be on the air still.
I don't know, man. Some people tell me I am.
Well, most people just tell me I'm condescending, but
well, that's true. That's not necessarily a bad thing.
I don't even mean to. I think it's just who I am as a person. Like, it's not a bit. Like, I'm not doing it just to piss people off. I can't help it.
It's not a bit.
It's not. Yeah, no, it's just who I am. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla. We'll be back tomorrow with more Hurrdat Sports Radio.